Either.
Okay, I guess that's it. Hey, everybody, welcome to Hash Church 3.0, episode 5. And this is a weird Hash Church because we haven't been able to go live. I haven't been able to get the stream from Zoom to go live on YouTube. So unfortunately, currently, we aren't live. So we're going to record this. I got a great group of people that got up for this today, all over the countries. And so we're going to do it. We're just going to have a chat, and we won't have our live audience like we normally do. So that'll be a little bit weird, but we can still record the show and throw it up on the channel afterwards. So I guess welcome all you happy faces out there in Canaland.
Hi, everybody.
Anybody else in pajamas from the waist down? Pajama bottoms?
Hi, everybody.
I have nothing on from the waist down. I'm just wearing a shirt today, actually.
Fuzzy pajamas only.
I'm wearing my clothes from working in my garden. I smell like kush right now.
Hey, we got Brian in from Best Friend Farms, too. I don't think you guys have ever maybe met him. He was in on a couple of my Hash Talks.
Hey there.
Hash Church episode.
How you doing?
Good,
Thanks
man.
for having.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for coming out. I've been enjoying reposting all that fire melt that you've been making.
Yeah, thanks. Just sharing it. It all comes through the good old bubble bags. So good 5-gallon kit.
You are a bubble ambassador, I'll tell you.
We are for sure getting there.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So we've just been working hard at the farm.
Good stuff. And you're over in Maine?
Yeah, in Maine, it's starting to get into spring. Everything's melting and snow's disappearing and things. The garlic's starting to grow. So we have some new growth coming in and signs of life.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so wild to kind of be in a situation where the winter's over and people are kind of like getting ready to, do all this stuff, plant those seeds, get the crops going. We got Farmer Tom in the house. I'm sure he's been preparing.
Yes, sir.
You've been on a cool little, well, I guess you're probably not traveling anymore, but you were traveling for a while, cruising around, teaching the good word of hemp.
Yeah, it's been going pretty well. I've been doing these Hemp 101, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We learned a lot last year, what to do, what not to do, where the bottlenecks were, and just giving people good, solid information. Right now, I'm in Puerto Rico working with some farmers down here to help them in some different, hemp projects. So, and working with the local medical growers down here. They got a pretty robust medical system down here in Puerto Rico. And they've really embraced it. They have, all the doctors are recommending cannabis to patients, not just certain doctors. And it's good to see the enthusiasm down here about a medical program, and they're so excited about it. And, it kind of reminds me of the good old days, First in Washington, once legalization came, the tone went sour. And so what's going on? So what we're seeing, and then Oregon was all fired up, so I spent a lot of time there, but they're kind of getting sour. And so Puerto Rico's, everybody's still fired up. It's keeping me fired up. And as far as the farm goes, we've got all of our seeds secured for the next 2 years. We've got enough potting mix and seed starter mix to get us through the next couple of years. And I just got my ingredients from Concentrates Northwest in Portland, secured those on Friday. So I'm feeling really comfortable about what's coming on. And I'm looking forward to the future, both on my farm and down here in Puerto Rico.
Well, I love that you're out there doing that, man. I feel like a lot of farmers, especially in the US right now, need to know what not to do almost as much as they need to know what to do. I feel bad that people are getting scammed out of shitty seed that they're growing and ending up not fitting into the regulations, or it's just not the seed that was said that they were supposed to grow. And just sort of all this, this pipe dream vibe that just needs to be kind of put into context. And hey, listen, this is hard work. It can be done if you do it right, but you just see so many people, potentially losing their shirts, making these.
It was devastating last year in Southern Oregon. A lot of these investors left once they found out about the weather and everything. They left a bunch of these farmers to fend for themselves. So a lot of stuff rotted in the field. And, and they had a lot of mold down there. Of course, it was the worst season we've had in I don't know how long. Hopefully this year it looks like to be a better year. And I just don't like to see people ripped off either. What we really teach is how to vet these guys out, how to do your due diligence, how to ask the right questions, how to contact other farmers who have used these guys. You want 3 C of A's for seeds to show they've done the proper breeding practices and done their due diligence so there's not hermaphrodites and that doesn't cause all these issues. The only good thing about last year is it really kind of thinned out the riffraff. You know what I mean? It was a horrible year. Nobody's doing well with it. And it kind of got the people who were in it just for the money out of the game. And it kind of, real farmers, we're prepared. And we take the extra precaution. We don't pack our fields. We allow for ventilation. We allow all these things that are key components to having a successful crop.
And farmers just are no strangers to devastation like the way money people are. Money people hit devastation and they are gone. Farmers hit devastation and they start planting for next year.
Exactly. You've already done your due diligence in your field and you prepared for the worst like we do every year. And being cannabis farmers and cannabis people in general, I've been talking about this a lot lately. We're used to adversity. We're like Gumby-like, man. We can contort each way. We'll figure out a way, and our motto is, man, there's always a workaround for everything out there. So that's the message I'm putting out there for everybody. Think outside the box, look outside the bubble, see how you can do it differently and go get it.
Cannabis and hemp farmers were literally bred for this. I mean, farmers in their own right have that aspect of, understanding weather and terroir and all of these things. But then there's cannabis farmers who also have had to deal with prohibition, the police, a lifetime of prison, having your children taken away, having your dog shot, having your friends rat you out. All of these different things that are just like, yeah, you have no idea, regular farmer guy, what cannabis farmer guy has been going through for the last, I don't even know how many years, but enough.
Too long to count.
Too long to count. Before your beard was long and gray.
Exactly. Before I had a beard.
Fuck. Well, I keep trying just because I'm such a tenacious person. I thought I would try to stream this live on Facebook as well, but it is also not working. And that's okay because we're recording this and it's still going to go up and it's sure better than nothing. I know that the people in chat right now are a little bit bummed out that we're unable to, they're unable to watch, but hey, at least we are able to gather and talk about this wonderful plant that we love. And for those of you that don't know, I've got a t-shirt on of some Lebanese women and they are making dry sift. So how about that for a nice sunny picture? I want to be these women. I just want to be wearing this outfit and I want to be sifting in Lebanon with these people.
That's from the book Hashish, right?
Suomi Laval.
Yeah, I love that book.
Suomi Laval.
I want to say one more thing.
Please.
While everybody's at home, we got an online school called Hemp Farming Academy. We've got a really good community there where we have over 45 video courses. Plus we have a private Facebook group that you can ask questions in, and I'll always pick up the phone. And if anybody out there wants to talk to me about what I have going on or the school or everything, my phone number is out there. I'm the guy who always answers the phone. So thanks so much, Marcus, for inviting me onto the show. I know it's been a while. I've been super busy. We've been in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and Salt Lake City, and I've been hosted by the Chamber of Commerce here in Puerto Rico. And, I've just been super busy, and all this other stuff has kind of caught me off guard. But, we're farmers. We're prepared for what's coming on down the road. And thanks so much for having me on the show again.
Of course, we're happy to have you, Tom. Absolutely. Geez, I just had a good thought I was going to mention and I kind of lost it. Oh, darn nabbit. Well, I guess as D420K would say, oh wait, there's people waiting to get in. My bad. Look, Hemp Guy, Mark Scaldone, MC West. I forget sometimes that I have to give permission to let people in. So sorry about that, guys. You were stuck in the outside room there. And but D420K's not in the house. I kind of was hoping that he was going to scream the bong rip, but someone else screamed it. So let's do that because
Bong rip.
Let's get a bong rip, boys and girls. Love that.
Yes. Yes. We've only have 2 women in the room right now, but I invite a lot every week. I've invited Alice, and I've invited Maria, and I've invited Dr. Natasha. Who else did I invite? I invited Chloe Villano from the college there. I definitely constantly have people telling me, hey, why don't you invite more women on your show? And I'm like, listen, I'm inviting a lot of women. They're just not always showing up. What's with you guys that you're always available just to roll in and you know, are the women, I know they're smarter, but are they also busier?
Most likely.
We have strong women
Sometimes,
behind us, right?
most likely.
Did anyone catch the subtle Grateful Dead reference there? I know Debbie and Mark probably did.
Yeah. That's
Some
actually,
say
isn't that a Jimmy Cliff song?
originally, maybe.
Yeah, man smart, women smarter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I think it's
totally.
a Jimmy Cliff song. It's definitely a reggae tune. They didn't write it.
No, but they sure played it.
They sure did.
It's a Harry Belafonte song.
Oh,
Oh, there you go.
well, thank you
Callie.
for that wisdom.
And we all learn.
Harry
Cool,
Belafonte was Rasta.
Harry Belafonte. How you doing, Hemp Guy? Mr. Skunkman Sam, Mr. Amsterdam.
I'm doing fine, except for the microphone or the speakers coming out of my computer instead of my TV.
Oh, I hate that. Technical difficulties, it happens. Oh, we got a good group in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 of us.
Did this start a half an hour ago, or you just?
Well, I've been recording for, I don't know, maybe 25 minutes, but we have not been able to go live on YouTube, unfortunately. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to post it so people can watch it.
Hey, Sam, how's your non-THC CBD variety going?
I don't have a non-THC CBD variety.
Oh, I thought you were playing with one.
No, my Corona Cure is THCP.
Of which you've patented and is now available to us, right?
Well, I patented it several years ago before they discovered THCP.
It's kind of what I figured. I didn't think it would take you long to have a kilo of it in pure heads.
I wouldn't expect him and his team not to.
You know,
Is
Sam,
that for sale?
I thought the other day of a cool show idea would be, I mean, I don't know how it would work. You'd almost have to get Rick over there or something, but you have such an incredible collection of cannabis museum type things that it would be cool to go through just a small amount of it one day, like things that you wanted to share, you know, and just have someone like Rick on camera being like, oh, and this is, you know, you in the background explaining it. Because for anyone that's ever been to Sam's house, I mean, he inevitably will always disappear off to this little back room and then come back with something cool. And it could just be anything. It could be a silly DEA patch, you know, for a particular year against cannabis growers, or it could be, you know, 2,600-year-old cannabis seeds from a gravesite in near some old tomb or something. But it's just neat stuff. And he has an enormous amount of it. And he has a really great knowledge on what it all is. I think it would be a cool show.
Sam's Museum. I could totally see it.
Yeah. I mean, really, if you could afford it, you'd get that little, you know, your little puppet there actually turned into a puppet, and he could do the whole show. But that might be too much investment of time and energy. I can't believe we can't go live. On his what?
On his patch collection alone. That's just entertaining.
Yeah, for real.
I only have 1,250 different ones. So if I spent 1 minute on each one, how long would that take? Like half a day or something?
It would be long.
I'd tune in. Absolutely.
Yeah, the one I really like are my favorite of your whole collection is the old, like the, what the hell are they? I guess they're like he's got like the Beaverland dams. They're all like, you know, artists have created.
Those aren't patches though.
No.
They're marijuana labels.
Labels. The labels are my favorite.
Underground labels from illegal marijuana ounces and pounds.
Yeah, those are amazing, dude.
I totally want show and tell. We have to get the show and tell show going.
Sam,
Yeah,
that's
for
really
real.
beautiful.
Fun.
What's the earliest?
I want to show you guys everything within my reach at this point. This is my Ken Kesey signed blotter sheet that I love.
Oh
Here on
shit!
my desk. Yes, I love the show and tell idea.
We don't want you to incriminate yourself and tell us whether or not it's active or not.
Wow, come on! Would Ken really sign a non-active blotter sheet?
For $10, I'm sure he would.
It must be some anniversary right now of Owsley of Bear, because I keep seeing all these Bear stories coming up it's Owsley or whatever, but is it like an anniversary of his birth or death or some other crazy shit that he did recently? Because I've seen more on him in the last like 3 or 4 days than I have in the last year.
Just an amazing cat. I mean, yeah, I got to run into him oddly enough at Debbie had us work one of the Grateful Dead shows back when we were gathering signatures for Jack back, I think in 94. And just working the booth, and up comes this cat, and he's like, "You want to buy a buckle?" He starts flashing me
for
buckles.
$3,000.
Oh, I'm like, yeah, exactly. I was
Fair.
like, "What's that worth?" And he's like, "Oh, this is probably a couple $1,000s to you. You know, I'd sell a little more, but you know, you're with the, you know, you're gathering signatures. So," and I was like, "Who are you?" He's like, "I'm Bear." I'm like, "Oh, I know who you are."
You should ask for the vial in his pocket.
Yeah,
we were way too busy. Again, we were gathering signatures. That's when we're working out in the lot. We did that, but when we were inside, we were serious about what we were doing, and you know, we had serious business.
Well, at the High Times Cups, they used to have those Orange Sunshine guys. What are the Brotherhood of Love guys? Did you guys meet them?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
That's
yeah.
that whole scene.
We ended up with a whole big jar of that here in Vancouver for a lot. I bet you there's still a few left like that, and that was like 25 plus years ago. It was just this big old bottle of Orange Sunshine, and it was you know.
Now, was that the granulated? Was that the granulated? Well, the kind of like look like little.
It was a
capsule.
tiny little tab, a tiny little microdot.
Well, they used to have a friend of mine back when I originally started with Can back in '93. Was this cat in Berkeley, and he moved into a abandoned house. That house turned out to be the old printing house for all the old posters, and they left all the old plates, and he started trading the original last gas plates and all that for actual art. And one of the things he got one time was a time capsule of Orange Sunshine and Purple Haze, and we actually got to do that and try the real stuff, which was actually, it was granulated, and you could crush it in between quarters and snort it, and it would onset within 15 minutes. And it was probably the most amazing LSD I've ever had in my life, hands down.
I'm not sure the same people made that. The first time I had any Owsley acid was purple Owsley, but they were sweet little flatter tabs, and it was in the mid 60s.
That's what these were. They were, yeah. He bought it was probably a time capsule from back then that was saved, and he traded for original dead art.
Yeah, and the Sunshine was put out by the Brotherhood Sands group, and that was I still remember being at Altamont, the Free Stones concert, and some guys were standing on top of a big school bus. Psychedelic school bus, and they had a huge brown paper bag, like from a grocery store, completely filled to the top with Orange Sunshine, and they were reaching in, and the guy's arms were completely coated with orange, and throwing it out to the audience, handful after handful after handful after handful.
The day the Summer of Love died, no? Altamont, damn. That was heavy vibes. Did you feel the heavy vibes, Sam, or were you just tripping balls?
I was so tripped out. I didn't know that anything was bad happening until after we got home and people started telling me.
Holy shit, dude. Yeah, that's
I was so high I didn't know it was a bummer until somebody told me.
You could tell how much of a bummer it was by just listening to the interview with Jerry Garcia right before. Like, you could be like, ooh, that is not a good vibe.
Well, I noticed that the music kept stopping. The Stones were playing and they kept stopping. And I would hear Mick say things like, now stop that, or whatever. I guess that was when the Angels were murdering the black guy.
Yeah, I think they put they had some type of a hit on Mick Jagger for a little while, didn't they? Weren't they kind of upset with him about that?
Yeah. Him and Keith.
Wow. Well, I can't, you know what, Sam, it just kind of blows my mind that you were just everywhere. Of course you were at Altamont. Of course you were eating
I still am everywhere.
Oh my goodness. It's true. Isn't that the truth? You're here right now on Hash Church. That is quite a story. You know, we got lucky too up here because Nick, obviously, I don't know if he got in trouble down in the States, Sans, but he did end up here in Vancouver. He did end up getting in trouble up here. Him and his partner Peter built a very big lab that was producing DMT and MDMA and LSD crystal and the whole 9 yards. It was pretty crazy in the 90s, the lab that those guys produced in Vancouver. It made our city extremely psychedelic. And I will say that it changed drastically when that lab got closed. It took a few years, but that whole that lab was the production of psychedelics for Canada, and it was the epicenter of Vancouver, and it was incredible. I mean, you could just buy grams of crystal LSD for $8,000 or whatever, and get yourself I don't know, whatever. I think it was 10,000 or hits or something, but pretty crazy that those guys just did that. And I thank them for it because it was a lot less alcohol people were consuming, and it was a very different frequency and vibration that people were experiencing thanks to the psychedelics that lab produced. And they meant business, those guys. They took shit seriously. They did not put out bad drugs. If it was LSD, it was LSD. If it was MDMA, it was actually MDMA. I remember because MDMA, when they made it, was a 4-hour experience. And when that lab closed and people started doing it with other molecules that were more accessible with easier precursors or whatever it was 10 hours long. And people were, it was bad drugs. It was just not the same thing as what those guys were doing. So props.
It's not the same as good drugs is what we're saying.
Well, I mean, just accurate drugs. I guess good drugs from a chemist standpoint is purity and accuracy. This the molecule?
Remember when Osley was first putting out his first acid tabs, he put a little methamphetamine speed in with them to pick you up.
Oh yeah? Well, I wasn't there for that.
Absolutely true.
So Orange Sunshine barrels had a little bit of speed in them.
No, they didn't. That's not true.
Which ones had it?
They were Osley acid, not the Sunshine by the Brotherhood. It was Osley acid because he somehow, for some reason, thought that it made it better.
You know, he was one of the people, kind of like you, Sam. You and Owsley are the two similarities. When I started Bubble Bags, I had two somewhat abrasive characters contact me via email. At first, I was just I knew who you were right away because you were you wrote me this short email that was if it don't bubble, it ain't worth the trouble. Do you know who first said that? Something like that. And I was just oh, fuck, this is a weird email. And then I can't remember what your email was at the time. It might have even been, no, it wasn't Skunk Man. It was some other. I was is this who I think it is? And Owsley was another character who hit me up, and he was like, yeah, bubble bags, eh? Like, I like butter better. I like putting my resin into butter. And then he's like, I started a dialogue with him over bubble bags. I ended up sending him a set when he was living, I guess, in Australia. Is that where he finished his life? Does that sound right? Was he in Australia?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so that was like the late 90s, early 2000s that I sent him some bags, and he just couldn't acknowledge that it was, he was kind of like, yeah, you know, it's okay, but I just took it all and put it into butter. I'm like, butter, like is in fat, like animal fat? You took that hash that you made and you put it into animal fat? I was like, bro, I wish you could have just puffed a bowl of it before you did that, but to each their own.
He was big on the meat diet, right? Like
he was
really
huge on the meat diet, dude. It was
pro meat all the way. I don't know. Have I ever told the story about like when I met Bear? I don't
think so.
Okay, I thought maybe I said that on Hash Church. So, yeah, crazy what you remember. So I defended my PhD dissertation on a Wednesday afternoon. It was March the 18th, 1992. And March the 20th, a day and a half later, we were in Hamilton, Ontario at the Grateful Dead show. And so a friend of mine was actually having an affair with Bear at the time. And she came up to me during Dark Star. So if I remember correctly, Dark Star, it went into space, and Dark Star, I was really high. I was just really not in the mood to interact with anybody. And she said, come with me, we're gonna go meet Bear. And I'm like, oh, okay. You know, so I was led through a crowd of people, and she had a laminate, so she was able to get me backstage. And I was literally on the side of the arena, and the band walked right in front of me. Like Jerry was like right there, like right in front of me, like as close as I am to my computer. You know, I'm just like starstruck. I didn't know what to say. And Bear was over in the side stage, and he had his belt buckle thing and a flashlight, and he was shining his flashlight on belt buckles, trying to talk somebody into buying it. And so eventually I went over there and was sort of his next person to talk to. And so this was during the drums portion now, because the drummers were just on stage. And the first thing he said when I walked up to him is he grabbed me in the gut and he said, you need to go to the gym, pal. He grabbed my beer belly and pinched my gut. And then my friend Sharon introduced us and said, this is my friend Mark. He just got his PhD in chemistry. You should talk with Bear. And so it was cool because my first discussion of chemistry outside of my PhD dissertation defense, because I slept the entire next day, Thursday, then Friday we drove to Hamilton, was with Bear backstage at a Grateful Dead show. And we talked from the drums portion through the end of the show, through everybody leaving the arena. I think we were the last two people in the arena, and just still talking about chemistry and acid and just talking about all kinds of things. And he was just an amazing dude. And just, yeah, I had basically about 2 or 3 hour conversation with him at a Grateful Dead show backstage. And we were the only two people in the building by the end of the conversation. It was crazy. It was just such a wild conversation. If I could only had a recorder and record like what we talked about, but we talked about everything having to do with chemistry, about having to do with psychedelics, about having to do with extraction, chemical modification, the early days. He referenced other people. I think he maybe talked about Nick. I'm not sure exactly. I have to put the thing. And again, I was super, super high at the time. So it was just.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I had said that once before in Hash Church, but yeah, that's like, it was my first interaction with chemistry as a PhD was with Bear.
Couldn't be any better. Come on.
Yeah.
That's beyond epic, dog.
Isn't that so cool? It's like total full circle, because again, I was just a spun out kid on Grateful Dead tour in the 80s, you know, like most kids, just, you know, wow, this band is like, again, I had said this before on Hash Church, you could go to like a Neil Young show or an Allman Brothers show, and you'd get hassled if you had a one-hitter. At a Dead show, you could just blatantly just blaze out in the open. And it was so cool because, again, like my friend G, Chemdog, who tells the story, for most of us who lived in the Northeast United States, we really didn't have access to really kind bud. Like you'd go into Manhattan and you get this little manila envelope full of mostly seeds and stems, and it was like $40, from the same guy you get an 8-ball of Coke from, But, that's like the extent of weed in Manhattan in like the, mid to late 80s. So when the Dead came to town, they just brought great genetics from NorCal and just tons of just great weed. And so we knew it was kind of like the cannabis smell was the Grateful Dead show smell to me. You know what I mean? Like it became like, it was so just conditioned to me, like really good weed. Oh yeah, that smells like a Dead show. Like skunky weed and weed that smells like dog poo. I mean, that's just like,
right.
Hey, Kevin, how you doing, buddy?
Mark, how you doing?
Good.
Welcome. Man. Good to see you live again. You're out of purgatory.
Well, you know what? Here's the thing. We actually aren't live right now. We're recording the show, but I couldn't get Zoom to work because I'm guessing the entire world is doing Zoom meetings right now. Oh, those were great Grateful Dead stories, man. I'll tell you, you definitely, if you want to see the most cannabis smoke you've ever seen at a concert, for me, it was, and I was there with Skunkman Sam and his wife. It was in Negril, Jamaica, at one of Bob Marley's birthday bash concerts. And it was, I have video footage of it. The audience legitimately looks like they're on fire. There's just billows of smoke coming. You keep in mind too, like when people smoke in Jamaica, they don't pass joints. Everyone has their own joint. So where you might have 3 or 4 people together at a Fish or a Dead concert sharing a joint, at a reggae concert in Jamaica, the joint is 4 times bigger and nobody's sharing anything. It's just your own joint. It was, you remember that, Sam?
Absolutely.
It was impressive.
I enjoy Jamaican concerts, yard concerts, Mom.
Yeah, yard concerts, exactly. Just good vibes. A lot of musicians have been playing free concerts lately, including Neil Young. If you're not a part of it, you can go to neilyoungarchives.com. Cost about $20. I got on there for the pre-sale tickets that he gives you when he does a concert. He'll let you buy them like about a week before, and you get some really great seats. But also all of Neil's entire catalog of music is on neilyoungarchives.com, and it's all of the highest caliber quality music. It's not some bunk bullshit MP3s. Neil's obsessed with quality and with proper music. But him and his wife have been doing these Fireside concert series, and he started it out in his, like, the backyard of his ranch with his guitar and his harmonica. Then he ends up inside sitting next to the fireplace, and he does, some harmonica, some guitar, some piano, just short concerts, 20 to 30 minutes long, but absolutely incredible and very unique to be able to see that with Neil. Clinton Fearon, the bassist from the Gladiators, who's been doing his own music for 25 plus years. He did one the other day that I posted as well. And I'm sure there's a lot more that you guys probably know of as well that have been doing these live concerts during our self-isolation time.
I think Trey Anastasia has been doing some quarantunes as well.
I've seen them, not live, but I've definitely seen a lot of them in his living room. That's great.
He's released like 2 songs. Yeah, just him playing.
And Mike's been doing some bass lessons and some theory lessons on his channel as well. So if any of you guys are fans of his bass playing, you can go check that out. And
hey, regarding the COVID virus and cannabis, I shared this link with Sam and with Marcus. I'm gonna put it in the chat. Obviously not now, but when you guys get a chance, check out this YouTube video from this guy over at Hebrew University who talks about the recovery phase from COVID and how cannabis indica, quote unquote, can be useful.
You're not supposed to talk about that, Mark.
Yeah, check this out though. I mean, I was actually in the middle of watching this when the episode started, so I want to give this guy a full listen to before I completely discount what he's saying. But do you know this dude at all, Kevin?
I don't. I haven't seen the paper yet, but I have been digging through that literature, and the lung fibrosis seems to be very interesting, where it may be reducing lung fibrosis, maybe in recovery. I don't know. The viral load stuff's kind of all over the map. There's some positive results, although in very small studies with HCV, but it doesn't work with HBV. And then I think someone published a paper showing that in THC in mice, it can make it worse. So yeah, it's kind of it's murky. It's murky information, but I don't know that there's reason to suggest people get off their cannabinoids right now. That seems to be a little bit premature and could be risky depending on people's condition.
Yeah, absolutely. Because in general, doesn't it just sort of boost your immune system in general because of its CB2 activity, and just sort of act as sort of like a peripheral anti-inflammatory agent that would help with fever or any of the other symptoms that could come along with getting any virus, let alone this.
I'm not a physician. I've been told to say that a lot when it comes to this stuff. But what I've read is it's an immune modulator. So if your immune system's down, it brings it up. If it's in a cytokine storm, it brings it down. That's probably the most important feature, because the cytokine storms are what are killing people with COVID. You know, the viral loads are going down and the storms are going up, which is a sign that your immune system's already dealing with the virus. But something's off.
Responding. The Dragonfly Earth Medicine family and Bubbleman hosted a webinar a couple of days ago with a few doctors on board talking about this very issue. It's very informative and very upbeat. There's a couple of out there moments, but it's worth checking out. I don't know the link on it. I don't know if Josh and Kelly are still on, but it's Bubbleman. You would know how to steer people towards that show.
Yeah, I put it on. That was all Dragonfly Earth Medicine. All I did was host and listen. So the props goes to them and all the people they organized and brought on. That was amazing. I really liked it. I thought Ethan's presentation was really solid. I liked Terry a lot. He was just like, I was just like, damn, I got to go hang out with this guy when this self-isolation thing's over. Cause he just was like, he's just the mushroom man. I love that guy.
Actually, John Lilly's the one who started self-isolation in a Ology.
You know, Todd's got his tank.
I also wanted to mention about cannabis. You know, the thing about cannabis is that it brings balance and stasis because it's an adaptogen. So.
Yes, this is true. Very
Question. On method of delivery, do any of the studies show should we be eating it, or is smoking still okay, or any guidance there?
Yeah, I mean, especially if you have it in your chest, they're telling you not to smoke at all, that it all should be ingested. If you have respiratory distress, smoking cannabis is not what you want to be doing. I don't even know if vaping it is safe, but you know, your lungs are trying to recover, and your lungs are trying. I don't think that it's more just to give your lungs a break from all the, you know, stress that just smoking puts on it.
But what about dabs at like 450?
Yeah, you know, I don't know, Mark. I don't think the research is out there. I mean,
maybe we should do the research. I'll be the subject. I'm set up right now at 450 degrees.
Okay, well, first get infected with the virus, and then we'll.
Ooh, wait, hold on.
No.
Hold on now.
Well, I mean, again, a double-blind study, you would have to actually have patients with viral load. I mean, it's just, I don't even know what the mechanism for putting health workers in harm's way and how that whole thing plays out, you know?
I think as long as you give them a dab first, they'll go with it.
No, well, we're following.
Well, that was weird. Oh, there we go.
You broke up a little bit, Etienne. What'd you say?
I said we're just following CDC guidelines and proper 6-foot spacing. We've also got authorization to do curbside delivery. So things that we're limiting as best as we can, patients' access.
Yeah. I mean, check out this for irony. So Pennsylvania, as you know, has state-run liquor stores. Well, those are all closed, but they deem cannabis as being medically necessary. So the cannabis stores in Pennsylvania are open, but the liquor stores are closed.
We're living in the upside down times for sure.
I just wanted to mention
sorts,
too
right?
that I
Well,
just wanted. Oh, excuse me. Go ahead, Ed.
No, go ahead, Sam.
Okay, I just wanted to mention that the highest I ever got on acid was not Osley acid. It was Nick's acid, Orange Sunshine, and I ate between 50 and 100 of them. I didn't know my friend had dosed his bottle of orange juice with 100 hits. And I was so thirsty. I walked up to him and I said, "Could I have some orange juice?" He goes, "Yeah." And he's so fucking high. Then he watched me with really big eyes as I drank half the bottle or more.
Oh my God, Sam. That's
I would say that was the highest that I ever was, but I was not there. So
Is that when you turned into a Dr. Seuss character?
no, but luckily my wife was there. So she took me home in her VW Bug, and we went back to Laurel Canyon, and I was able to sleep that night. Because what I've discovered with acid is once you take more than 500 or 1,000 mics, you might have a slightly stronger experience, but it doesn't really last longer, or it's pretty safe stuff actually.
okay.
4 months as opposed to 5 months.
It's pretty safe stuff. I'm like, I know guys that did very small amounts and just never came back the same. They just went to a different place.
Sid Barrett, cough, cough, Sid Barrett.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know him personally, but that's definitely a good example. But don't we all have our own Sid Barretts? Like, I remember we had our own Sid Barrett. We called him Microwave. And
yeah, well, I never really had bad trips, and I took acid more than 500 times.
Who has taken a trip during quarantine already?
No, thanks. Nah. I know my psyche and all that, and yeah, not the time. Probably, yeah, no, not time for high stressor. But
that kind of reminds me.
I did think about it.
I've seen people talking about it. It's definitely happening. I see a lot of Facebook posts about people showing off their legal mushrooms now, around.
Yeah. I did that this week. It helps with anxiety, guys. If it's not a very high dose, if you don't feel like if it's not very intense and you don't think about coronavirus that much and that the world is ending, I'm kidding. But yeah, it is a nice, it is a nice thing and helps out, I feel like.
Well, welcome, Allison Wooksauce.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for showing up. How was Spain?
Congratulations on your win there, on your second.
Thank you, guys. Actually, it was kind of crazy. We're quarantined together now since we came back from Spain. I'm not an American citizen, so it was pretty stressful, the return. I really thought I wasn't coming back. I actually entered the United States 1 hour before they closed the doors for like any outsider, any person that is not an American citizen. So it was very stressful experience, but we're here safe in his house. There's a huge garden. I'm getting a lot inspired in a Damn Pure family right now. So I'm using this quarantine time to plant a garden and to prep a garden, which is what I think everyone should do. So everyone that has a garden should do that. So now it's this time. All of my free time will be towards that. And Spain didn't happen much. Cannabis was canceled. Some cups happened. Happily, the Ego Clash happened. This guy here got first in water hash category. I got second. It was very nice. Everything.
Boom! Congrats.
Full source. And
take it home with the bubble bags, or maybe not. I don't know. I don't want to overstep my boundaries.
Yeah, but it was great. So we're doing this, and then we're washing. We're using the quarantine to wash, to look at resin, plant a garden, and that's been it. So Spain was nice, but was cut short.
Yeah, I was surprised how many people went. I was supposed to go to Italy on the 24th to see this different form of extraction. I was going to do a tour. And then I was kind of like, oh, geez, I don't know. Like, it sounds like Italy is not doing too well with this. Like, maybe they're going to quarantine people. I don't want to get caught up in a quarantine. And that was like weeks before Barcelona, like at least 2.5 weeks or something. And then people were all like, oh, I'm going to Barcelona. I'm like, what? Like, I just kind of saw the writing on the wall. I was so surprised at how many of my friends were like, yeah, I'm going. I was just like, wow, all right, well, fuck.
No,
let me know how it goes.
Because Cannabis, I think this Cannabis as an event was very irresponsible, and they're still being very irresponsible because they posted something online that they were not going to cancel the event like 5 days before.
Right.
And then the government made them shut down, made the event not happen. And now they have a new date, guys. We don't know what the fuck's going on with the world. And now they have a new date on September.
Well, what I heard was that they did not have insurance to cover, like, canceling it because of some virus. But if the city canceled it, then they might be insured. So they had to wait for the city to cancel the event, and the city canceled the event like on an hour after everyone showed up to set up their booths.
Yeah, and now everyone showed up, everyone grabbed flights, everyone like left work, everyone cropped the garden before, like 1 week before sometimes, like, so it's very irresponsible, especially when you're dealing with people that, work with cannabis, I feel like it. So.
Well, I guess, go ahead.
If you think about it, Cannabis and all these big smoking events, half the people I know get sick when they go to them.
Oh, yeah. No denying that.
That's just a cold truth. I was thinking, man, if everybody goes there and Corona hits them, Jesus Christ.
No, it's a huge vector. Like, nobody can deny the vector that is 50,000 cannabis smokers getting together in a city where everyone that doesn't smoke cannabis smokes cigarettes, and just smoking. It's the sickest I've ever gotten in my life has been at Cannabis, and it was no joke. I was sick for 4 weeks, hard, like bedridden, like thought I was dying.
My wife ended up in the hospital with pneumonia.
And we stayed at the same place. So what your wife got was what I got. Like, we all were under the same roof that trip. You, me, Diana, and Tony.
It's crazy to see that you got sick too, Marcus, because I know you don't share things with other people. I know you don't share your devices, you don't smoke joints. I feel like in a moment like this, we always have to think about all these harm reduction strategies that we already know for like drug consumption, but way more. Like when we were there, I was kind of paranoid with bacteria.
Everybody at Cannabis shares joints and shares pipes and shares bongs. That's basic nature. Cannabis is
but the way viruses work, viruses are completely different. They're not like bacteria. Like, if you have strep, you should be taking an antibiotic. But actually, if you have a virus, taking an antibiotic is actually not the best thing you can do for your health. And the thing is like, well, the way viruses are just like bundles of RNA and DNA that get into your cell and infect your cells. And so it works completely different than bugs. It's not like a bacteria. And so when you were saying like, yeah, well, it's kind of like the kid who ate dirt as a child is healthier because his immune system was challenged with not like the complete viruses, but just like a piece of the virus. I'm not exactly sure how the body uses like its immune challenges early in your lifetime to develop an immune response. And so like some people may get the coronavirus and it may just be like influenza virus. They may get a sore throat. It may be, again, go through their system in like a week or two, but others are going to be really susceptible. And I guess it hits the lungs, and before you find out, if you don't do the testing in a reasonable period of time, it could be too late. And that's when you need the respirator, and that's where it puts strain on the medical system. But there is no real, you could attack viruses with a prophylactic antiviral, like they're talking about this chloroquine and all this other stuff, but they really don't have things that are specific that fight these viruses. That's why HIV was such a challenge to develop specific antiviral therapies to treat it.
I have faith in our immune systems. It's the ultimate
Yeah,
laboratory where the
absolutely.
work is done, you know, like
It's
that's
the
why
body's own pharmaceutical company, right? And so,
yeah.
right. And so on that aspect, I think, you know, like Ethan hit on this the other day, which is, I think keeping your endocannabinoid system nourished can only help, right? Because you're basically going to get your immune system as good as it could possibly be to, you know, fight off what it can and what it can do. Ultimately, I think if you do get a virus, whatever virus, whether it's a rhinovirus, just a common cold, or just some other, you know, viral infection, the best thing you can do is, sleep, push the fluids, get your kidneys working, you know, and just, you know, try to, you know, stay away from things like antibiotics. The thing with antibiotics, if you do take an antibiotic, you should be taking, you know, live yogurt cultures after that to help reestablish, again, what these guys were talking about in the talk the other day, which is your biome.
Yeah, unfortunately, you know, if you're taking antibiotics, well, first thing I wanted to say is that a lot of the science and everything behind this is all funded by pharmaceutical companies. So let's not forget, you know,
people who sell
where
the
the profits are going here. And they want to come up with solutions for you that help profit them. So that really is bypassing a lot of the money and the research being put into the natural immune system, which continues to be, you know, bypassed because they don't want our natural immune system to be first and foremost because it's free. And it's also because we can make those things or we can grow those things in our garden. So I think that, you know, also one thing we got cut out on before, but cannabis is a stasis. It creates stasis in the body. And the reason why it creates stasis is because it's an adaptogen. So I think that it's really important for us to continue to look for natural adaptogens and continue to have faith in our immune system. And every time that we take antibiotics, it's not just the upper tract of our digestive tract that gets washed out. It's also our lower digestive tract, as well as different microorganisms that are inside of our blood. So unfortunately, just like balancing with yogurt or a pre or probiotic afterward is not truly going to help you. We keep going back to soil microbiology as well as, you know, birth. So many people now around the world are being born via C-section and completely losing a massive amount of the microbiome that happens during birth coming through the birth canal, which sets us up for life. It sets a tone in microbiome that we have forever and ever, and nothing really can necessarily penetrate that. But unfortunately, you know, this virus is telling us something. We as a human species right now are not very healthy. So that's the reason why it's impacting humanity so much. We need to look to our immune system, continue to boost our happiness levels, because when we're depressed and we don't feel good, we produce cortisol, and that's just a bummer. So let's all, you know, really work on being happy. And I just think that,
and building our immune systems is crucial, like Mark was saying. And, you know, we drink medicinal mushrooms every single day because we know there's toxicity out there and viruses out there all the time. And medicinal mushrooms give you killer T cells and cells that go and attack viruses that come into our body. And that's what makes us healthy. Even after the Black Plague, which killed millions of people, the people that lived through the Black Plague all of a sudden lived to 70 and 80 years old. So in order for us as a human race to get stronger and live longer, we have to look at our ultimate health. And it's not coming from the medical industry. It's coming from our food. And it's kind of beautiful that the coronavirus is happening in the spring right now, at the best time to start a garden and to start a food. All of the videos that we're seeing from supermarkets with people, you know, lined up for miles trying to get food, when, you know, it's a wake-up call to start producing some of your own food at home, and then you can start making your own seed, which you're going to continue growing. But when you eat food from your own garden, it gives you endophytes and it gives you special compounds from the soil that help you fight off disease.
And just like our microbiome right now as a human species is totally out of balance, so is our like faith and feelings about science. We're completely out of balance with it. We're continue to look towards science and away from Mother Nature when she's the one that has all of the answers. We are people of the earth.
I just wanted to mention that transplant patients do not want a strong immune system. It'll cause rejection of their organs that they've been transplanted.
But how did they get there to begin with? They got there to begin with. They're having transplants of a bodily part because already their microbiome was already problematic. So we have to look at the root and not just say, oh, well, let's take, 0.5%, 0.005% of the whole population and use that as our baseline.
No, it's not that I'm using them as an example. It's that that there are groups of people who cannot make their immune system as strong as possible. It'll kill them.
Sure. Yeah,
but that's because they lost their immune system already to begin with. Their immune system is gone. And then they have to...
Now they're transplant patients and they have to deal with it.
To bring that all together, the drug that's showing so much promise right now was actually initially found in the bark of a tree. So it's quinine. Quinine is basically the malaria.
That's not chloroquine, right? They're two different compounds, right?
Yeah, chloroquine has a chlorine group added to it to slow the metabolism of it, but it's believed to have the same mode of action, but just lasts longer. And then hydroxychloroquine has another hydroxyl group hanging off of it somewhere. That makes it a little bit safer. But
isn't that like a metabolite or something like that?
What's that?
Isn't that a metabolite or something? Or I think somehow they're playing the metabolite thing. Right,
yeah,
exactly.
So you can try to mimic it with they're metabolized by CYP3A4. So CBD slows that down. Grapefruit juice slows it down. So some folks are just taking quinine and grapefruit juice to try and stretch the quinine a little bit further. You can get quinine in tonic water, but it's only at 83 mgs per liter. So people are using this at like 400 to 500 mgs in some of the COVID patients, sometimes twice a day. So I don't know if you can reasonably get there with quinine, but you might be able to get a prophylactic dose, because I'm assuming the prophylactic doses don't need to be as high as the doses required to treat people that have like millions of viral particles per microliter, right? If you look at the qPCR data in COVID, the viral load in the tissues is outrageous. It's really, really high. And they're managing to reduce that with chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine. So I would imagine if you're at an early infectious stage and your viral load is really low, you probably don't need the full dose to push it off and for it to be preventative. But I don't know. It's all conjecture right now, but I find it somewhat reassuring that this is a drug that actually, like most drugs, we found in nature and then modified, and so it's hopefully we'll be able to get it to the entire world. My fear about chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine, I mean, all of them have long QT issues. If you have AFib, I've got AFib, so I can't take it, or I got to take very small amounts of it because it can trigger AFib patients to go into long QT. So it's got to be monitored with like an AliveCor or an Apple Watch or something. But there's going to be rationing issues, I think. The pharmaceutical companies are already donating millions of doses, which is really nice of them. But I don't know that it's going to get to all 7 billion people. Maybe it doesn't need to. Maybe the virus doesn't spread that far. But quinine is something that probably could. Like that's an over-the-counter
tonic water, right?
Yeah. Zinc is there's another good study on it. If you co-administer it with zinc, it's believed the mode of action is still in debate, even though it's been around for 70 years. But one mode of action that's been proposed is that it's a zinc ionophore. So it transfers zinc into the cell, and zinc is something that stalls the RNA polymerase, so the virus can't replicate. But human polymerases seem to be able to handle zinc just fine. It competes for magnesium, I think, in the polymerases class.
So what's the effective dose to be able to control symptomology in a patient that's got advanced symptoms? Like, is this something that they?
Yeah, the famous French paper that came out from Raoult's lab was using a combination of hydroxychloroquine and I think an antibiotic, surprisingly, to your point about antibiotics. I don't understand the mechanism of that, but that antibiotic, azithromycin, I think has some activity in Ebola, and I don't know why. But typically, you're right, Mark. They don't touch viruses, but this one particular antibiotic seems to be helping, and it may also be helping with any sepsis or pneumonia-based infections that are going on. So they're kind of giving them. I think.
Yeah, there's probably all kinds of secondary shit that happens,
Yeah.
right? It's like throw a monkey wrench in there. See what happens.
It's treating the symptom and not the cause.
Exactly, Mark. That's a really important point. You know, everything that we do, we really have to think about it as, you know, like dropping that stone in a puddle of water, and you know, you don't look at the first ripple, you've got to look at the 50th ripple. And when we're dealing with our, you know, health and well-being, that's important. So I've had a lot of experience with chloroquine. After the tsunami, I was over in the Aceh province in Indonesia. I was working with the WHO, you know, going down the deep dark holes of malaria because there was lots of problems after the tsunami.
Standing water.
I saw a lot of very, you know, moderately healthy people who were testing positive with malaria go on chloroquine and then become incredibly sick. So I don't necessarily feel like, you know, on a personal level, you know, I hear what other people are saying out there in the world, but I've personally, you know, prescribed you know, hundreds of people chloroquine and felt like that was a really bad road to go down.
What was your, I'm curious what the side effects people should look out for are on it. I mean, I've read about the long QT stuff, but I haven't heard of any, you know.
A lot of feebleness, you know, people becoming very weak, not only just weak in their body, but also sort of weak in the mind. And you're sort of sitting there and talking to them even after 2 days of using it, and their mind can't stick with like the same train of thought. Or, you know, of course, I was dealing in a very big disaster area. You know, there was a lot of people that died. I was there for a long time. And I know that, you know, they had, you know, sadness and depression and things on their mind at that time, but it still was, like we called it, the 9-yard stare, you know, like somebody looking off into the distance, sort of 9 yards, just not really checked into their body. And it was almost like, you know, the more that they were on the chloroquine, the more that, you know, they were sort of leaving their body, which is also like the strength of their being as well.
So what are some?
You mentioned that people get weird dreams on it. That's one side effect I read about. But so yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Do you know what the dose is for malaria? Do they use more or less of it than they're thinking about using for COVID?
You know, I don't know. I don't know what they're saying about it. I feel like quinine, you know, is an awesome idea, and, you know, we can go down that road and talk about it because it's from nature. But then again, you know, just like Mark was saying, when you start to synthesize things, it really changes how the body uptakes it and understands it. So, you know, unfortunately, I'm not having a whole lot of faith in chloroquine right now, but that's my own personal opinion. You know, something else might come out that, you know, might be awesome. But I saw a lot of people have depleted immune systems and depleted, you know, vibrational energy from it.
Okay.
Can I ask 3 questions? I just have 3 questions. They could be answered in a whole. Can we ever share joints again? Can we clean the glassware in between uses so it's safe that we can use the same rig if we clean it? And 3, will our cannabis gatherings ever be safe if we're not sharing, but other people are, and then there's sloughing virus everywhere? It's a lot of questions.
There's
I have a
slothy virus. I have to be able to virus provide.
You're breaking up.
Yeah.
They break up. They broke up.
I'll weigh in while he's rezoning in, as I think there's going to be a resistant population, because we see that in almost all viral infections, and those aren't in any of the models right now. All the models you have this exponential curve with an R0 of 2, which is very similar to a PCR curve. PCR has an R0 of 2. It doubles every cycle, right? But all of the projections are going exponential to the moon. They don't have an S curve in them. And everything in nature typically has an S curve. And that S curve is a combination of social distancing, of natural immunity, of education, and what have you. So I guess optimism is healthy for my mental state right now. And I'm looking at the graphs and thinking it's not going to be as doom and gloom zombie land as we're seeing out there. And so I think we'll soon have an immunity to this thing, like other cold viruses that come through our population that we deal with. It's just,
where is the sigmoid?
You know, you made me think of another Fish lyric, Kevin, right? Before it was, we were treating the symptom and not the cause. Now expanding exponentially like some recursive virus.
Yes. You got to just drop that.
Making myself laugh here.
And play it cold turkey, like no one knows you're doing it.
I want to throw
like Katie Tour, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Go ahead,
we
Wade.
still have to have forward thinking and again, just plant and have good food around us.
Also, you know, one quick thought to what you were saying,
Yes.
Debbie, is if you're going to pass a pipe, you can always light it with your lighter on the end of the pipe for a little while. I learned that from Bob Snodgrass. You know, it's a great way to burn out anything, but, you know, not necessarily during this COVID time by any means. But I think that, you know, that could be helpful in a social situation. But also, you know, we have to be resistant to what, you know, type of environment that's been given us.
And also the fact that it's spring right now, the shoots that are coming out on the trees are extremely powerful.
Yes.
They're really high in vitamin C, and Terry Willard brought up the alder catkins, and finding alder trees and the buds that are coming off on and making medicine out of the buds, you know, like it's really powerful medicine. Even the pine pollen and different pollens that are coming out are extremely useful to our immune system. So the beautiful new growth of life that's happening in the spring, we can utilize in our immune systems right now. So it's, again, good timing if we want to look towards nature, for some of our cures. Even birch bark, you can boil and drink birch bark and get the betulinic acid that's coming from the cambium layer, which is why chaga is so important, because chaga has the most antioxidants of any herb or plant on earth.
And the chaga tree you can also tap right now. A whole lot of people are birch tree. You can tap the birch tree right now, and that's something that you can use directly into an IV. So, you know, that's just really interesting how tree water and tree blood is almost identical to, you know, the same pH and the same sugars and nutrient value that our blood is. Pretty awesome how nature provides at the same time as what we need.
Birch Polypore is an unknown antiviral, antifungal polypore that was one of the 3 mushrooms found on the Iceman in Italy, which is very interesting. The 3 mushrooms that were found were the chaga, the birch polypore, and the amadou. Go ahead.
And the birch polypore, what we know about as far as what nature produces, it's absolutely the strongest anti-vermin, the strongest anti-vector thing that the forest grows, and it's incredibly bitter. But what's interesting about it is when it grows on the chaga tree, or when it grows in nature, it grows on other things than birch. But it's white, and it stays this gorgeous, like beautiful white color, meaning like nothing in the forest will attack it. So that's just, we've actually used that as a foliar spray on plants that have any kind of mildew, leaf-eating mildew, or any plants that are showing rust fungi. It's been unbelievable. We've been able to drink it. I've given it to children who have had worms, and they've been able to devermin themselves within like a week. It's an unbelievable medicine.
There's a really good book called The Cures in the Forest, and I encourage people to get the book The Cures in the Forest. And I think the bark is an underutilized medicine by people. Bark, tree tips, even tree the leaves, the branch itself is at the very end is very useful to us. So I think it's
and people have the ability right now to go on a walk. Let's get outside, go on walks. Of course, keep your social distancing, but right now nature's just exploding with spring, and it's just such a wonderful opportunity to get out there and, you know, bathe in nature.
Drink lactic acid bacteria and cover yourself in dirt and wash your face in compost.
And smoke hashish.
Well, could I ask
about
that? I've seen, you know, we've been, because we've been inside and we've been following this, going to the CDC's website and trying to get the latest and greatest instructions on what we're to do if we are quarantined. My family here in my house is quarantined. We just want to make sure that we're doing the right thing, and we're, you know, and I've heard mixed things. Some people say that you should go outside, and then other people, I had seen 2 posts, and it looked like it was from reputable sources where they had a bunch of activities and they said, please remain indoors. Is there a situation where if the virus gets so widespread in your community that actually staying indoors is more beneficial for the collective good of society as opposed to going outside? Does anyone know?
Well, it's passed by droplets, that we know. So the CDC, you know, made a decision a few days ago. They were trying to say that it was airborne. It's not. It's droplets. So being out in nature only gives you vitamin D, which is absolutely imperative to our immune system. Make sure that when you are outside, you're not totally bundled up. You know, get outside, breathe the clean air. I think that it's really important. I don't think that we're going to be, you know, nature is not passing on the virus. Human beings are passing on the virus.
So if you look at the viral load of the area that you live in, if you live in New York or New York City, it would be really hard to go outside and get that type of thing, which really points to the fact that people living in the country or having that country home is extremely beneficial right now. And that is how we've gotten through the past sicknesses. So going out, if you live near the country, going outside and covering yourself in dirt and breathing that air is going to be your ultimate health.
True.
I feel pretty blessed to have a forest in my backyard that grows almost all the mushrooms you guys just mentioned. Like
all comes down to your own apparatus, Mark.
It's all right behind the house.
Yeah, I've been taking walks on the beach and trying to get out a good bit here. I'm in Massachusetts, and you know I have a lot of family in New York State, and New York City, and you know, I've been a resident of New York City, and I really feel for them right now. It's geographically, it's not a safe space. So, you know, if you can get outside,
I guess there could just be a higher propensity. If there's a higher propensity of infected patients, by definition, there could be a higher propensity of infected services. So like you could just be walking, I guess, to the store or something, put your hand on the wrong stair railing and get infected that way, versus, you know, I live kind of like in a suburb, I guess I'd call it. You know, I mean, there is a population density. There's houses around us and stuff. And certainly like when we go to there's a grocery store where we mostly shop at. It's kind of like unlimited services right now. And it's kind of like, I've never seen it like this. I don't remember it being like this after 9/11. This is like a whole new reality. It really is.
Yeah.
I don't know, like large cities like Los Angeles and New York. I mean, you'd think again, I understand this whole flattening of the curve, but man, you need a certain fraction of the population to do those absolutely essential.
It's a big fraction too. A really good example is in 1918 when the Spanish flu hit. I think it was somewhere in Pennsylvania that you guys threw this huge parade with like 200,000 people. Yeah, so then like 4,500 people died and massive casualties into the hospitals over the course of the next 7 days. At the exact same time in St. Louis, they closed schools, churches, gatherings of 50 or more people, like everything. They just closed everything. And their curve was like this long, flat, like barely, like totally non-comparable to what went down in Philadelphia. So that's kind of a good sort of historical context of looking
Philadelphia.
Like they have done this before, like social isolation, starving out the virus definitely seemed to work at least. But then, man, conspiracy folks are just going nuts right now. Like there is some crazy I've always had an appreciation for the bizarre, the nut bar, like back in the day, I read every single David Icke book. I read, started with Robert Anton Wilson, got into Terrence, but then Terrence led into David Icke and all that madness, and Kathy O'Brien, Transformation of America, just the craziest shit you could possibly imagine. And I feel like it's just dangerous Terrence told me something a long time, well, didn't tell me, but through the tapes, he said, the anchor of mankind is belief. To fervently believe anything is the anchor of free thought. And when you believe something, you automatically cannot believe its opposite. So what I've tried to do in all of this is just kind of keep an open mind, kind of like I look at least my government here in Canada, I don't think they're out to get us. They're like, hey, can you guys like please just like socially isolate? Like it doesn't seem like the same vibe when I talk to my buddy in New York who's like, they're trying to take our guns, they're trying to make us stay in our homes. And I'm just like, whoa, like what a total difference in the two countries. It's like our government's like, can you please just stay inside? Canadians are like, I guess so, like probably what we should do, like seems like the smart thing to do. But then from a conspiracy standpoint, you got people thinking
2 years later, since 1918, we still have a hospital bed problem. That I think you can maybe blame on government, but I don't know about everything else.
Right.
Well, that's it.
I think it's good to say that they're saying that, you know, I think it's important to note that it's not that people just carry the virus from one person to another. There's cells inside of healthy bodies that attack viruses and kill viruses. And they're talking about using people that get through the virus have natural antibodies in their blood and in their bodies that they're talking about, you know, being able to utilize to create cures for it. So it's very important for people to realize, you know, how important it is to be able to process a virus. It happens, and it's essential to the evolution of humanity.
How about that all the governments are deeming us essential and allowed to stay open during the virus? That's just, it almost blows my mind how cool it is, because like 2 years ago we were felons, you know, selling weed to adults, and now we can sell it. But man, ATN can probably say it too. The responsibility of staying open like this is pretty overwhelming.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. We actually just got a letter from the Department of Ag in Oregon that states because we are an agricultural company and we have a lot of agricultural licenses, that we're allowed to go on about our business as long as we keep social distance. So for us, it's really awesome. We're going to, you know, be responsible. I don't know if other people are necessarily responsible out there, but it's pretty funny, Debbie. You know, you're saying that, you know, we used to be, you know, on the outs and now they're pretty much, they sent us a license in the mail saying, go ahead, continue to deliver your CBD to people. So that's what we're doing. We're just going to continue to be able to get the medicine out there. So I was really thankful to get a letter from the Department of Ag saying, go on about your business. But I do hear that that's going to be a big deal for a lot of companies.
Does that extend to all your like subcontractors and all the people who supply you? I mean, that's where it seems like it gets a little foggy.
In California,
we have to have already had a lot of our product, because it's really difficult right now to get, you know, supplies.
Yeah, it doesn't pass over to our suppliers by any means, but what it does do is it helps it keep it open, so that if they shut down certain postal services to certain businesses or areas, that we will continue to get mail, you know, as long as they continue to stay open. But it's specific to just our company.
And as far as supplies, the lucky thing is we've chosen to live near a wilderness, so we have endless supplies of medicinal mushrooms that we will be able to continue to have medicine no matter what happens.
So I'd love to hear from Jack and hear about what's going on with the most vulnerable. Because, you know, the people that are like blessed enough to own properties and have forests in their backyard and have all this clean water and not be worried about, like, how are the vulnerable people of the streets feeling right now during all of this, Jack?
They look like this, like how I look right now. It's terrible, man. Like you said, I feel very privileged because I'm looking out at a forest in front of me because I bailed out. The reason I bailed out is because they closed all of the emergency shelter areas, which, you know, legitimately, if you have rooms that have hundreds of people on mats right beside each other, they can't be open. But those people are all on the main corridor streets of downtown. Like usually on the main blocks where there's maybe 20 to 50 people during the day, there was probably 200, 300 on each block. Like, so there was almost 1,000 people like in the main areas, all dragging their tents and their shit behind them. I like don't want to be all panicky, you know, but I talked to the bureaucrats, and the language that they speak in without actually saying the words, or one time saying the words, when all services are shut down. They asked me, how many outreach workers can I supply? Because what they think they're going to do or try to do is, you know, how we have military bases and stuff. They want to corral everybody so they can figure out who's sick and who's not sick, isolate the sick people from the not sick people, and then have all of my staff who generally like work inside of a building where people consume drugs, and that's where they watch them to keep them safe, that they'll be going out and watching people in the community and having people like the drug users and people who live in those SROs helping one another in these communities that they'll build that will keep the sick people isolated from the not sick people. It honestly, and as you can imagine, like if you had a $500 drug habit a day, which you had to do many crimes for, like what are you going to do? Like when they say, hey man, you have to go self-isolate. So again, I had some pretty high level doctors call me like last Monday from the province and say, they're not from the province, from a housing place, and they said, what will we have to do to get people to go in their rooms for 2 weeks and self-isolate? And I said, you already know what the answer to that is.
Get them lots of drugs.
Yeah, and so they said, okay, so if we offered morphine or hydromorph tablets and dexedrine to the people who used methamphetamines, what else do you think we would have to give them? And could your outreach workers go out and try to
make it happen?
Yeah, like get buy-in from people, because we know that we won't get buy-in because the tenants don't trust us. You know what I mean? We're the landlord. So that didn't happen all last week. I thought that would happen right away as a way to get people to go in their rooms, but it seems like they're trying to have some kind of because you can imagine that if you started giving somebody tablets to stay in their room for a thing like this, why would you want to take them away at the end of the 2 weeks? They're going to go back to committing street crimes at great cost to themselves and society if you take the tablets away from them that you give them right now. So I imagine they're having some larger philosophical and structural things, trying to figure out how that they would keep it going if this is something that's going to be long term, like a year and a half. So it may actually really help for somebody like myself whose job is to fight for decrim and clean access to drugs and shit like that, because this crisis may force them to just give drugs to drug addicts in order to keep them isolated. You know what I mean? So,
yeah. Jesus.
And me and my kids were both sick before this whole shit started, so I just decided like this is just too confusing and stressful. So I was lucky enough to be able to bail out and come to the country where we could figure out in a couple weeks if, you know, that we're good.
It's it makes my anxiety levels go up for those people, to be honest. Like it's one thing to have your own family and home and all that, but
Marcus, man, you know what? I think my last member count like 2 weeks ago was 1,700. And so, for example, with the giveaways, to keep people, we follow BC CDC protocols. So they don't want people close to each other. So anybody who comes for just a giveaway, we give the joints away in the street now. We just have people standing on our block. We're like, here you go, keep going. You know what I mean? Like, don't come in the store and the outreach office unless you need a Narcan kit. Don't come to the cost recovery service unless you're using it. And even in the street population, people are panicking, man. Like you can tell with the numbers that they're stocking up with the idea that one day that they'll force us to close our doors. Yeah. So that's the impression, like what going on for the people in the community. And I think, man, what if one of the members had it? Yeah, I don't want to be all dark. You know what I mean? Like
Somber.
But it is stress.
Well, it is dark.
It is stress provoking to think about like the what ifs, right? And my partner, she's the kind of the boss of a lot of frontline services. So I know that talking to her and the other managers, they're definitely taking steps to make sure that everybody has all the information about trying to protect themselves and all that. But it definitely does seem pretty scary. And I think that we'll see like some pretty modified work protocols for a long time that'll actually probably change some of the course of drug policies, you know, because if they give everybody prescriptions medically in an emergency time, then that will change the way we look at changing laws later.
Oh yeah, people are able to look inward. I mean, I'll tell you, yesterday at like 7 o'clock at night in Vancouver, people hung out their apartment windows and clapped for the care workers in Vancouver.
Oh wow!
Like it was like you could hear people just woo, like clapping all throughout the city, and that was like, you know, Vancouver's never done that. They've never shown any type of respect like that. So you know that people are paying attention to this and they're looking inward, and it gives us an opportunity as humanity to be human, you know, to choose humanity, the thing that we are, over this sort of reptilian, sort of emotionalist, non-empathetic, non-compassionate mentality of just like capitalism or whatever. And hopefully, you know, that's a good thing. I think that people are kind of being a little more conscious, like, okay, like maybe this is better if we help each other. Maybe this is better if we support each other rather than it's all for one and one for all.
It's also the world so much smaller. All of a sudden we're realizing, yes, I definitely hear what you're saying, Jack. You know, it is definitely going to be a socioeconomic thing. People that are struggling have a higher chance of, you know, maybe contracting the virus because of health issues, also because they don't have a safe environment necessarily to go to. And also, this is not a sides thing. This is not this country against this country and I can choose a side. Like, we're all vulnerable to this. We all now have this ability to connect on such a beautiful human level that we can look at people, like you were just saying, Marcus, that they're doing the same thing all over Europe, hanging out their windows at a certain time, and they're clapping at the same time. And it's like, hey, we are all together. More than ever, I've actually felt during this whole thing like this beautiful global community. The people that are reaching out to us are from all over the world. I get emails and messages on my DM from our Instagram that's just so beautiful and connecting. So, I mean, something is opening up there. It's creating some kind of an opening for us to be able to have success on another level. It's an opportunity. We have to be able to look at the shit that's been given us in this horrible pandemic and find some kind of opportunity in it so that we can grow and really align ourselves with a higher vibration, because I don't think that humanity really has the ability to go to a higher vibration unless we're faced with things that are painful. Nothing makes us work harder than things that are painful. So I'm really encouraging everybody out there to just like have a look at it, and let's go deeper, and let's try to reach this vibration that we all need to be able to get rid of this virus.
And Marcus, as you know, in Canada, instead of the scaremongers, there's the caremongers. So, you know, see what you can do in your community to be awesome.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, Jack. And my question is very simple. How do you roll joints without touching the paper or licking the joint to glue it?
Take a dab.
No, for giving joints away, he means. I guess you could.
Yeah, exactly.
You could roll it with machines, and you could use like a little sponge.
The rock cones, you don't have to glue or stick anything. You just stuff it in there, and you could twist the end with gloved hands, I guess.
Yeah, I would paint brush in a rolling machine.
I would cover my hands in dirt first and then roll the joint and then pass the joint out.
I haven't smoked a joint in so many years. It's just not even funny. But well, I did smoke a pure hash joint, but not like joint. I miss joints. I miss that I ruined joints for myself. I smoked full mouth hash for like 2.5 years every single day. Just had an incredible collection. It was like Renee and he's a sweet skunk and shishka berry, all these great hash plants, all these great things. And then after 2.5 years, I realized, oh my God, I got to smoke a joint. And when I lit the joint and tried to smoke it, it tasted like a camel's asshole. I don't know. It was just terrible. It was burnt and just nasty. I never could go back. I totally ruined joints for myself. It sucks. I used to love joints. And again, I used to live in a cloud of smoke. My wife.
Well, you had the world's best hash too. Let's put it, maybe for smart grade hash, a joint would taste pretty good.
I think so, yeah. If I ran out of it for a long time, that's the thing. Because I used to get into these debates online where people would be like, I'll always smoke joints. I'm like, have you ever had full melt hash in your stash for like 5 years straight? And they're like, well, no. And I'm like, well, get back to me when you do. And
hello, Jack. I have a question, which is, how did the joints get rolled that you gave away? I mean, did humans touch them? Were they licked?
No. I used to, like, way back in the day, we had to hand roll, but no, I used another dispensary's future roll machines, and then when they went to a white market company, we just bought our own machines. So I have only one. I have one human doing production who himself lives in a fairly isolated scenario, doesn't have a lot of contact with other people, and since we are, like, I do run Health Canada sites, I follow all of the protocols as best we can to try to keep people away from each other, and no licking. No licking.
Don't lick the joint. That was another thing I could just never get over, or also getting past the like super wet joint. It's like, here, man, here you go. I'm just like, ooh,
I still
stick with my dab rig.
Hey, and I still here, I'll show you. I don't have the quality control there of what you guys do, because but Marcus, here, like, here's something that somebody gave me yesterday that I thought looked fairly nice. I don't know if you can see.
Oh, yeah. Is it rosin or a solvent extract?
I think it's a live resin. This guy seems to make most of his, like, and I think this is shatter. Oh wow.
Kind of looks similar though, eh?
I hear. Wow. That looks nice. Here's a shadow from the same guy. I'm sorry, it's badly.
I would like everyone to show the camera what they're smoking right now. Wouldn't that be a nice screenshot? Yeah, there we go. Oh, it's so nice when the camera goes and focuses properly on your. This is great. Look at this. Oh, it's so good. Look, I'm behind, smiling. Oh, I love it.
Bubble hash.
Oh, nice.
Bubble cream.
Wade's got the sheesh there, a little stone of hash.
Hey, Marcus, make sure you get a screenshot of this, right?
Yeah, well, we can make one because I'm recording it.
Okay, there you go.
But this is great for sure. I think almost everyone had a stash up there. Ooh.
I got Sherbert times Triangle Kush. Beautiful.
So here's the thing. I saw everyone hold up their jars. Are you guys familiar with the Calyx containers?
No.
Dude, I love these containers. Mike West turned me on to these containers. He met this guy, Jake, who works with Calyx down in, I guess, in the US somewhere. They stack really nice on top of one another. If you notice, it's got this little piece here and it stacks. It's a square container. You can open it with one hand. All you do is really squeeze on the lid. And what I like about it also is it's a good amount of extract for sure. That's some bubble hash, some wedding cake that I got from Concentrated X. But it also has a little terp skirt. How about this? A little PTF terpene protecting cover from consuming your plastic lid.
PTFE.
PTFE, yeah, sorry. Same thing we used when we did the terpenes inside the terpene lids, because some of those companies weren't using those, and it was crazy how the terps were just consuming the inside of the container. It would make this weird plasticky, sticky mess. So I got to give these guys out.
It's a FEP.
It's a what?
FEP liner.
Oh, there you go. Thank you, Mike. Mike would know. He turned me on.
FEP, what's that? What's the FEP?
He's unmuting.
It's similar, but it's not as reactive to terpenes. That's one of the things that they're seeing that I suppose FEP makes better. Of the clear, it's essentially a clear, transparent liner, but anti-stick, terpene-proof, moisture, oxygen blocking barrier. And then it's got an O-ring in it.
I like them. I really do. I like the jars, man.
Have you noticed that it keeps your stash better longer? Question mark.
You know, I smoke my stash pretty quick. I'll just be honest. But I just like the access that I have. I like the size of it. I like the way they stack in my Pelican case, and I like that they're just different.
They need Myron bases and recycled plastic lid or hemp plastic. Those are my only two complaints. Because I do like having clear bottoms so you can show off your oil, but that clear bottom's going to let in UV light. Alternatively, if you have a Myron or some sort of cobalt or amber glass, that's going to reduce the amount of UV degradation. It does have a seal in it though, so I'm impressed with the shelf stability of the smell, especially in higher terpene.
I'm just not a fan of these ones you got to push down and open. I don't think they're quite as good of a jar. They just don't seem to do
We
it.
kind of have to carry those in California, unfortunately, due to the controls currently.
Here too.
Proofing, which is a frustration because it causes a major problem for a lot of people who get older and have arthritis, and it's a major problem with these concentrates. Is they're not one, everything is printed so small, that's a problem. Two, then people who suffer from any type of hand debilitation definitely has a very difficult time getting into them. So that's something we're working with the state on, that we have to do better, as well as especially environmentally sound, because there's still an ungodly amount of over packaging in plastics for small amount of concentrates. It's obnoxious. And we're not even talking the pens. So it's just what we have to carry in for the product to get it out the door. What we're loading onto the consumer is still overbearing and outrageous for what they're buying, really.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Back to the corona. Does anybody know if the majority of patients who have corona, if they got it from droplets from people coughing or from their hands from touching a contaminated surface? Does anybody know?
Hey Sam, this is Colin. I have two people that are close to me that have it in New York City, and one of them got turned away from a hospital yesterday, and they believe they got it from touching surface areas. That's the only way that they weren't around people that they remember sneezing or
some
any
people
of those types of things.
They don't have the symptoms. Like some people carry it without the symptoms. So it's hard to ever know if you touch the surface or if you inhaled it in the air or if you.
Yeah.
Just that's what's scary about it. It's like, man, they made some glasses.
I went and bought box.
I don't know.
As soon as we.
Skunkman Sam that was he was trying to ask me a question a while back, but I keep getting the kid kept interrupting me.
It was just about the joints.
Oh, Right. Thank you. Sorry, distracted by children.
As
That's
soon as
okay.
we heard it
You
was
do that.
regarding droplets, we had everybody, especially since it could survive on paper, since we handle cash as well as plastic cards, we had everybody immediately go to gloves a couple of weeks ago. So that's something once we heard about immediately, we implemented before any
Here in Holland,
or any of the CDC.
So
in Holland,
Etienne, same thing as I have the guys wearing gloves because of physical money. That's the best thing that I can do, right?
here in Holland, the majority of businesses no longer take cash. You have to pay with a PIN card, a debit card.
That's what I came across
They're
yesterday.
trying to implement a cashless society. I've
Everything
got all
was
sorts
cash.
of research I've done that I can show you guys. It's to promote the false round globe theory. I'm just joking.
Yeah, we don't get that. Debbie and I can attest, we don't get that love here in California. We definitely have to have access to cash or even ATMs on site because everybody rolls around in a very much cashless society, and that's just the reality of what they're trying to do. But the reality that we deal with, that we have to pay our taxes in cash and all that, we still have to deal heavily in cash. So we always stay or try to stay up to date on things such as this so that we can, respond and react accordingly. Because
You can always launder your cash, with maybe UVC or something. Like there's UVC bulbs that will help.
We should do a whole show on that, Kevin.
And the Fed.
Sam and your bitcoins too, bud.
We got a compliant bank account recently. The first one really since working with you, ATN, back in the day before Bank of America kicked us out. Dama Financials, if you guys know those guys, they do this very high level scrutiny to FinCEN standards and then somehow hook you up with a bank that's FDIC approved. So we've been officially, formally, legally banking for about 2 weeks now. After we got kicked out of our 10-year-long credit union, it finally was like, you guys are gone. So
can you drop that link for me, please? I need to because
I've
been kicked out of 38 banks.
38 banks.
Here in Maine, we have Seaport. We have a credit union, compliant credit union, Seaport, that I've worked with for a year. It's wonderful.
Yeah, Massachusetts has just a few, but it's been okay here. But if there's information to be shared, I'd love to read on it and better understand it. It'd be awesome.
Could I ask Debbie and ATN when you guys get kicked out of a bank, what reason do they give you? What do they say? What's the offense that they're kicking you out? I mean, what's
marijuana being federally illegal and jeopardizing.
Didn't they know that going in? Setting up an account with you?
So for example, the latest one I've been kicked out of, because I've been kicked out of all the finest large banks and a couple small banks. The latest one, 10 years ago, they weren't so nervous. So the original operators of Magnolia walked in, talked to the president, told them what they were doing. They said, fine. 10 years later, they reevaluated their stand on things and just sent a note saying, we're closing your accounts on this day. It was like 3 weeks. I called and I told them that's not fair, really. It's not enough time for me to get things going. They gave me an extra week, and that was that.
They don't give us any reason when they close our bank accounts up here.
It's run the whole gambit from day before payroll, getting a call saying the check's in the mail. You're done. Oh, that's lovely. As well as it's usually just the same. It's just it's federally illegal, or there was an audit done from some, and we were contacted by the feds that we can't deal with your cannabis account and blah 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 blah. So there's been, like I said, 38. So each one's been different, but all of them mostly the same. Usually checks on the way, expect it, you're done with us. So we always investigate and have a couple in our back pocket in preparation. Because you have to do that. That's the reality. I just want to act normal. That's all we want to do, is be normal businesses, because we are normal retail businesses. But the frustration is none of us can use proper banks, or when we do, you have a limited time only.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? Well, one tip I can give for Canadians, I was in Colombia, I don't know if it was 6 months ago or something, and I was standing in line to get checked in onto the plane. And it was another woman, just one woman, and she was a Canadian woman who was like working with the banks in Colombia, Canadian bank, but doing, building everything up. And I told her, I've had, as a cannabis company, I've had some problems with the banks in Canada. And she's like, oh, that's strange. And so we started talking about it, and she finally started asking me questions. And she said, you don't have American accounts, do you? And I said, well, yeah, of course. And she said, oh, that's where it's happened. That's where it came from. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, if you were operational with a bank for 15 plus years, and then overnight they hit you up and said they were closing your accounts, I can guarantee you from working at banks that would have come from America, because they know if you have American money in your bank account, like they know, they like to know where their money is. They can investigate American accounts. And if they just did a little research on yours and decided they didn't like what you were doing, they have the power to absolutely call the bank, because the relationships, the Canadian banks are terrified of upsetting the big American banks, because everything goes through the big American banks. Like you can't do money transfers without going through Chase Manhattan. You can't do any of this stuff, even in Canada, without those big American banks. So a lot of that, if you're in the cannabis industry and you're having problems with banks, it's a little bit of a bummer to lose that exchange each time, but that could be the difference between having your accounts closed up here and not having them closed.
But when do you think, and again, I'm just thinking out loud here, that it could just be a matter of like the whole federal, not the federal regulation, but just this WHO thing, or this United Nations stupid thing, that as soon as that thing just triggers, that there'll be some bank like Bank of America or one of these large big banks who will say, you know what, half of our fucking workforce are cannabis patients. It's okay to do business with the cannabis industry, and completely open the industry with welcome arms. In fact, have like marketing deals, marketing towards the ATNs and the Debbies, and trying to get all of this money. I mean, to me, it's like it's an untapped opportunity. We already know that the market is there, right? So the fact is that ATN's business needs financial services. They need point of sale transactions. They need to be able to pay their paychecks, do all their expenses, do all their taxes, and all that stuff that any business needs, right? Why is the cannabis industry still being penalized? It's because this 280E bullshit, or this fucking federal and this international fucking stupid treaty that all the money is somehow tied up. I always think that, who is the executive in the bank that just closed down Debbie's account? Who is the guy who basically signed off? Yeah, it's okay. Let's just close them again. They'll bounce to some other bank. It's like his business is now losing account that's generating revenue. They're going to just go to another bank for just another executive. Maybe that dude's a weed smoker and he won't shut him down. I mean, it's just so
Here's what it is.
random.
This is what it is. There's so much illegal activity happening through banks. So many criminals, way more sophisticated and dangerous than us. And just like everything, we're always the low-hanging fruit for the feds. They use us to wedge into taking away civil liberties, locking up huge populations of people, and just being general, super jerks. I think the banks are afraid that if they have us in there, we're on every website in town, the feds will open the door and see all the really criminal stuff that the banks are engaged in. So they don't want us in there.
You guys see that HBSC manufacturing money laundering suitcases, and when they got bagged, they got a fine.
You got to understand, though, there's a great passion for Debbie. Debbie used to come to work back when they would work at BPG, and she just called the local DEA office and just start talking to the DEA. Why are you a cop? Why are you against marijuana? Why are you totally against this? Just totally.
That's that guy. That's that me and ATN book got wrapped up in this federal case with Ed Rosenthal, and yeah, that's the DEA agent that came to my door to serve the subpoena. He was so nice, like, dude. Like, how can you, you seem nice. Why are you working for the DEA? And this is what he told me. I couldn't even believe it. Oh, I got involved because I wanted to stop criminals, like serious people. et cetera, et cetera. And it was all fun until I had a kid. But then I realized those guys had guns, so I asked if I could get switched over to the marijuana department where I could just go after marijuana users. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Coward.
Yeah, that sounds about right, though. It's like, low hanging fruit versus like work and put your life on the line.
Exactly.
But it also taught us to be human too, for us to understand, Sun Tzu, know your enemy better than you know yourself, understand what their mindset is. I still watch cops and other things. I just want to understand their modus operandi. What are they actually doing? How are they interacting people? Understand their mentality gives you a better understanding about what you're dealing with, what you're fighting against, because again, they're humans too. And eventually we were able to connect with enough grassroots people around that we were able to change laws in states, that we changed that momentum that went from it's never going to happen in your lifetime, kid, to when's it coming to my state?
I totally understand that for a cop or someone in law enforcement. I don't understand that for a banker. For a banker who's watching the economy go, and now what you see, I don't know if you've seen these numbers, ATN, but actually cannabis store revenues are up in California, right? Because people, again, they're buying lots of toilet paper and buying lots of stuff at the shops when they go. But, the point is that someone in the bank who's a financial guy, not a law enforcement, is saying, no, we can't do this. We have to kick this client out. It's like, it's so
yeah,
stupid.
but do you really think that they're just making that decision, or do you think there's a memo from the Defense Department or some other high-ranking government where it's
they
like,
all
we don't
say
like this?
it came from high up. They all
exactly.
apologize. They all say, we're really sorry. You're really cool. We had a great relationship, but it's not me. It's come from above 99% of the time.
Okay,
and I believe it does.
So do you think that there's like people at the DEA who drip on these senior executives in the banks?
No, I don't think the DEA are involved at all. I think it goes they're like over here, the banks are here, and whoever's telling the banks, probably the White House.
So Marcus, what do you think? Not that it makes a difference, but what was the kernel that led to Debbie's bank basically giving them the boot? What was the thing that first started? I don't know. I mean, I'm just trying to think, like, what's the motivation?
I always think this is a group of people that have a very, very, very different mentality. Quite possibly the opposite of the mentality that cannabis gives you, potentially. And it's the greatest fear they have, is that while they're trying to continually brainwash society with their beliefs and their core values that aren't really everyone else's beliefs and core values, that nothing cuts through that bullshit better than herb, while cutting through the bullshit of their pharmaceutical lies, while cutting through the bullshit of their justice system, while cutting, like, it's the ultimate enemy to this long-term agenda of just, whatever it is. I don't like to go too deep down the rabbit hole and think it's some huge conspiracy. I like to call it an agenda, because a conspiracy it sort of insinuates that maybe it's not happening at all. It's just all make believe. But we know this is happening.
Well, maybe we can adopt the word prospiracy. And also, Mark, one thing I was trying to say or thinking about is, where do all the banks, last I heard, they've all been bailed out by the government. So who's really in charge of the banks? Like the mass amount of money that banks even have to be able to be running right now, it's from somebody up above them. So the banker is not making any decisions.
Yeah, they're all nationalized now. I mean,
right.
They were just given notice that they can do a zero reserve lending. So they're lending out money they don't have.
They've been doing that for a long time.
It's always been levered, though. They've always had like a 40-to-1 ratio of what is it called? Fractional reserve, right? They've always had, but they put out a note on Sunday saying we need the fractional reserve. They can loan money they don't have.
But this is just like when money went from gold to not representing gold anymore, to just now representing paper that you print. This is just the next version of that, which is terrifying.
What's the exchange today between the dollar and the euro? It was almost unity, right? I mean, right? Not the dollar in the euro, maybe the dollar in the pound. Am I thinking?
I haven't been tracking that particular currency pair, but I would imagine we're all printing money like mad right now, so it's kind of hard to do comparisons.
So what's the long? Isn't the long-term impact is that that's going to ultimately devalue the currency in like the next, say, handful of years, say from 3 to 5 years from now? Printing a bunch of currency today, right?
They tripled the money supply between I think the last crash and this one, 2008 and this one. However, they didn't rain it from helicopters or give it to people. They gave it to bankers, and it didn't necessarily, there's a Cantillon effect. It didn't really get into the economy completely. And so we probably haven't seen widespread inflation. We've been seeing inflations in certain arteries that they're subsidizing. But I think what's going to happen next is we'll probably see inflation a little bit more immediately because they are going to probably rain it on everything they can. It seems to be the only trick they have right now.
They should grow weed.
Yeah.
Stabilize the economy.
We need a weed-backed currency. That's what it is.
Isn't there hemp in the money?
Yeah.
Hemp script.
Oh, I was gonna say, ATN, remember when we first got closed down by Bank of America? Before that, they loved us. They knew what we were doing. We used to go down and the teller would be like, and smell the money, be like, oh, we love you guys. And they were even talking about giving us a house loan. And then at that point, they told us that there was some wing of their company that evaluated these kind of, I don't know, sinful, I don't know what you would call them, the activities. And whenever they flagged one in their banking system, they would look at it. And if they'd been there and been good banker, banking partners or whatever, they just let them roll. And they decided that sort of Berkeley Patients Group and some local vice shops, they were still letting us roll. But of course, shortly after that, we did find out that our bank was being monitored, I guess, by the Department of Justice. And when it got a fat, juicy balance one time, they seized the money, took all the money, and booked in our account negative $999,999,999. Me and ATN were negative billionaires there for a moment in time.
That's when DEA seized that when our CPG got destroyed in 2007. Yeah, Don actually went down to the bank while they were seizing the account and took all the money out of the bank account by the time the lien got on the DEA. Shit you not.
And that's proof right there that there's an agenda, like deeply, deeply disturbing agenda against cannabis, to the point where they would never do that even to a money launderer, to a massive drug lord. Like the same thing with like when they arrested Mark Emery, and it was like the number of pounds they said that his cannabis seeds grew was exactly the number that allowed you to charge someone with the kingpin law, which was like the death penalty, which was pretty intense up here when he was just like, people were like, oh, you can't go down there. Like they might kill you. And he was just like, no, I'm going. I can't run away from this. We were just like, I don't know, man. Sounds like kind of like the thing you run away from. Having your life threatened seems like, I don't know.
Well, they tried to do that to our friend Ed Rosenthal. And in fact,
I remember
Debbie and I, we were the two of the recalcitrant seven, because we knew that we could only give the 5th and 10th Amendment before the federal court, because if anybody said, yes, he was the boss, they were going to put kingpin charges on Ed, and it was life in jail. So it wasn't a death sentence per se, but it was a death sentence that I would never see my friend again. So thankfully, all of us, we all went to, first it was a grand jury we had to go through. Then it was the actual federal, we had to go up before the actual judge, declare our 5th and 10th Amendment. And fortunately, we were held in contempt and they let us go home. It was weird.
They never even booked it on our records, ATN. They didn't book them. They actually, when we refused to testify against Ed Rosenthal, they put all of us on trial. Me and ATN got put on trial for civil and criminal contempt of court for refusing to testify. And
holy shit, you guys are heat scores.
And we still refused to testify, and they literally made us go on trial in federal court here in the Ninth Circuit and get on the stand. And me and ATN realized they were letting us make little speeches. It was Judge Breyer. So our speeches were all like, what we're doing is right. We're supporting the will of the people. We don't understand why the government has us here. The government's actually wrong in this case. And one by one, we got up and said that. It was so cool. The judge was like, he gave a speech about us. He said something like, when people look at this case, and they should, they'll see how you can bring strongly held views into the federal court in a dignified manner that gets them heard. And then he said, if you guys are guilty of civil contempt of court, if going to jail will make you testify against Ed, I'm going to send you to jail. If it won't make you testify against Ed, I'm going to send you home. So we're like, our lawyers were like, no, get out of here, get out. They literally let us just say like, no, no matter what, we're not going to testify. And Judge Breyer sent us home. And even though he found us guilty, he never booked it on a record. So it was really pretty epic / stressful.
And,
Solid.
and Debbie, it's actually being taught, I'm told, in law schools on how to do proper civil disobedience in federal court.
Crazy.
Solid. Very solid, you guys. Good,
How's it
good
going,
way
D?
to stand. Very good. Bong rip, mother lovers. Let's do this.
Right on, dude. Nice to see ya.
Sorry I'm late, guys. Mark sent me a text. Hey, where are you? I'm like, I looked at the thing this morning. I'm like, oh, I got 5 minutes. I'll just lay my head back down again. And wham, he's like, where are you? I'm like, holy fuck, scrambling, get dressed, everything. Good morning, everyone.
You playing video games late night with Etienne or what?
Well, I wasn't with Etienne, but I was video gaming until about 4:30 this morning. I always fucking do it, man. Like, I get on at, 9 or 10 at night, and I'm playing a little bit. Then a few other people come on, and we're chit-chatting from all over the world. We're talking about the virus. We're talking about what's going on where they are. We're talking about we're bong ripping and playing Red Dead and shooting fucking everybody. And then it's 4:30 in the fucking morning, and I'm like, what the fuck? Time for bed. Bong ripped, man.
You're the best, dude.
Sure glad you do this stuff, Mark. I sure am. This is a highlight.
Yeah, it's fun. It's good fun, Today we had a little bit of a technical difficulty. We can't go live. So we're just going to upload it after we, I'm sure some thousands of people will see it and it'll be fun. I mean, honestly, I'm just happy to gather with you guys and and shoot the shit and tell some stories and, feel better, feel good.
Very stressful times out there.
Yeah, the funny thing is that there's still a bunch of people in the chat.
I know. I looked earlier, there was like 47 people or something. Okay, 27 now. Still though.
Yeah, they're waiting for the delayed, broadcast, Shows you how many people make a day.
Matthew Clark says, anyone in here know if after I let my hash dry on cardboard, does it need some time in a jar to cure? It seems like the longer it stays in the jar, the more oily and better it smells. Yes, and yes, and yes.
As long as it's cured.
So many people, I always ask people, well, do you understand what cured is? Because cured isn't like when you make your hash and it's all brand new, like that's preserved. Do you want to preserve your hash and put it in a freezer or a fridge? Do you want to cure your hash? Well, that's a little different. That involves terp burping and, aging your hash in different varieties of containers and temperatures and places. So it all kind of turns out weird and different. That's for sure. My oldest is going to be 10 years old this year.
Oh man, I've tasted that.
So it tastes like crazy though. Does this not taste crazy?
Yes.
Yes. Like perfume.
And just rips your fucking head right off.
It's so crazy.
Wasn't traditional Afghani buried for 2 years and then actually pressed after it was sieved?
I'm guessing Sam might know this.
Sam?
Well, it wasn't that they were really trying to age it, to be honest. What they were doing was just waiting for somebody to buy it.
Look at the color of that shit.
So they were just storing it in the bank of the. They were just storing it in the bank of the earth, then until buyer came around.
Exactly.
I want to show you guys this strawberry banana kush, I guess it is. And then this one. Then this one here.
Which one's that?
Jalapeno pepper.
I was gonna say, looks like some fucked up.
That's some wilted cannabis, dog.
I was like, dude, you need to like take care of that plant.
Capsaicin
I knew
dabs.
so. I knew it. No,
Capsaicin dabs.
Right.
This is my weed plant. I got a bunch
Hey,
of them.
Marcus.
Yeah.
I got some cool seeds from Great Lakes Grease Friends over there. I got some all kinds of different watermelons and heirloom tomatoes, which is another hobby of mine. So I got some
Nice.
beautiful seed trade from Andy over there just a few days ago, and all kinds of unique greens and brassicas. So we did kind of a northern latitude or northern region trade for types that he's saved by seed and his own varieties.
Nice.
So
What's your favorite kind of
just
tomato?
amazing.
What's your favorite
that?
kind of tomato? Heirloom tomato. What is your best?
My favorite out here, I grow sun-grown, no-cover tomato heirloom here, so I have to have adapted or ones that do well. I try out about 15 plus varieties each year, but the pineapple slicer out west, out in Northern California, was my favorite. I haven't tried out here yet.
Cherokee Purple and Brandywine. Those are the two winners.
Ooh, beautiful. I love those.
Yeah, you
I love
used to
even
grow
the
those
sun-grown.
you grew those in your greenhouse, didn't you, Sam?
Absolutely. We would get easily more than 100 kilos every year. We got single tomatoes of Brandywines that were more than 1 kilo.
Did you pull a lot of tomatoes off your wall in your living room there, in your window?
Oh, yes. We also grew, but the container, the little 10-liter pots with them in your window, they don't yield so many tomatoes. But I've even had 20 liters on the floor with all the fruit coming over to the window.
Dude, I'll still say your tomato vine that was in your window in your apartment in Amsterdam was nicer than like most of the tomato plants I've seen people grow in their gardens.
Well, we love tomatoes, and Dutch tomatoes are the worst in the world. So you gotta find some solution, and heirloom tomatoes is the way to go.
Dutch tomatoes are the equivalent of iceberg lettuce. Is that what you're saying?
No, I kind of like iceberg lettuce. Dutch tomatoes they have no smell, very little taste. They look red from the day you buy them to when you throw them away. They look like a tomato, but they ain't.
It looks like Alice has got her
Sam?
seed collection going.
Have you tried Stupice tomatoes?
I have to.
Sorry.
I started yesterday. So if there's anyone in Northern California, I want seeds. I can't trade seeds yet because I don't have seeds yet, but I will collect it in the end of the year. But I'll accept donations of seeds. I'll go grab it after I'm quarantined of Spain. Just to make sure you guys are all safe.
Dr. Wade. Wade, where are you?
I am in Sebastopol, like Santa Rosa area.
There's a real easy one. I don't know if they're still doing it. In Sonoma County, there's a group, the Sonoma Valley Cannabis Enthusiasts or something like that, that has been doing for a couple of years regular meetings every Tuesday, I think. And they're teaching people how to grow. They have a campaign called Grow 6 Big Ones, which in the in the California scheme, you can grow 6 plants for your personal use.
Yeah.
And yeah, their whole thing was grow 6 big ones outdoors. And they're giving away a lot of seeds over there. But with the quarantine thing, might be easiest if you could just reach out to me and I can send you some of the things I got sitting here, because I have way more seeds than I'm ever going to sprout. And they'd be mostly CBD and THC things together.
CBD and stuff helps, but I want also veggies.
So?
I got a bunch of clones downstairs and some seeds. We popped some seeds too. Popped some BioVortex seeds now, and also sunshine stuff, like some of the seeds I collected in her garden. Some Rebel Moon stuff. I'm waiting for it to pop. Can't wait. And I'm gonna do the 6 outdoor with this ones, and let's check how they're gonna be. Pheno hunt maybe on that. But I really want heirloom tomatoes. Like I'm gonna prep. Like I need Josh and Kelly. I kind of like need maybe to call you guys and show the garden, because it's like from zero. I have no idea how to start. Like I have a bunch of ideas on how to, like, what to do, but how to start is very hard. Like, start digging. I started digging yesterday, checking the soil.
We got you, girl. Let's talk.
We'll do a little FaceTiming in the backyard.
Yeah, we can do another Zoom when we get off of here sometime.
It sounds like a good series for a show, like Alice and Wook doing a garden, getting help from Josh and Kelly, recorded every week or two.
I'd like to be involved too, please.
Yeah.
That would be really cool. Let's figure out how
Let's camera up in the garden.
Yeah, what plants go better with what? Some will get rid of pests, some will attract proper stuff. Like that's the stuff that I am totally what the fuck what.
Another good person for that is Sean Los Gardens. He's cool.
True.
He had these little vials of his cannabis seeds filled with all these other seeds that are the beneficial plants that he grows around his cannabis plants in his area. And he likes to give them to people that live in that similar terroir. And they're always like, what the fuck is this? And he's like, well, those are like the cannabis seeds. And then these other seeds are like a variety of other plants that are going to help you out. I was like, dude, that's cool.
Yeah, we always do that.
That's kind of like...
We give out big fat bags of seeds and everybody's really stoked. And I'm saying, you'll find the cannabis seeds intermixed in there for sure.
Well, I definitely want one of those bags.
You got to search for them.
It's awesome.
But I wanted to also say for people to look up Peace Seedlings and Peace Seeds online. They're out of Corvallis, Oregon, but we've walked their gardens before, and Alan Capular is the man who runs it, but his kids run the Peace Seedling part. So both of them sell seeds, but they grew 200 varieties of tomatoes on their property.
And Alan has been breeding tomatoes for his whole life, his whole adult life.
Yeah.
So a lot of the reasons why delicious tomatoes have hit market is because of Alan, and it's really cool to check out his varietals.
Beautiful flower.
I originally got my tomato seeds from the Seed Savers Exchange. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that group, but it was started by Kent Wheely years ago. I've been a lifetime member for 35, 40 years.
So I imagine you have some good seeds.
Well, I've grown a few.
Yeah.
Woo! That oil of oregano oil went down the wrong pipe. Oh.
Dr. Alan Capular, he grows wild garden seeds. We've been buying their varieties for years. He does great greens. He does an amazing rainbow kale, which is a red Russian crossed with the lacinato. That's our top favorite, has a lot of purple in it. And also Don Tipping down at Seven Seeds in Williams, Oregon. He does an amazing job too. We took some breeding classes down there when me and my wife lived in Williams in the early 2000s. Those guys all have good quality seeds down there, and I highly recommend it for sure. Unbelievable.
Oh, thanks for the share, Tom. That's great. I, all this talk of heirloom tomatoes, when I had my gallery, the Melting Point Gallery, and I decided, hey, I wanted to build this beautiful gallery with this beautiful vapor lounge where, something that I just hadn't seen in the cannabis space, where it was like, let's build something really beautiful. And no one even believed it was a cannabis lounge when they would come in. They thought it was like a jewelry store or something, because I put these beautiful hardwood floors in, these cherry wood floors in, Japanese cherry.
Here's some of the seeds that we. Go ahead.
Nice. Yeah, you can talk, man. I'm good.
Here's some. These are straw flowers.
This is just a huge tote. We have like 3 totes of just pollinator.
Here's some stuff that we gathered.
Garden seeds, just pollinators, just the ones that you want to intermix with all of your cannabis and all of your fruit and your veggies that are sweet or things that get attacked in your garden.
All marigolds. This is all what we gathered from last year. So we're gonna have, basically our whole entire property is gonna come alive with flower petals.
That's awesome.
And we just find that everything gets so incredibly healthy when we're planting pollinators, and it's beautiful too. We were getting species of birds even this spring that we'd never seen before. Well, that we just saw last year that seemed to come into our farm in the summer, and we're just wondering if they sort of told each other where to come back to. And already we're starting to see insects. So
I just want to remind everyone, part of growing a garden is to save the seeds. So the garden is the source of the seeds for next year.
Yep.
So you're acclimating your own seeds.
Yes, agreed.
You'll really see a difference after 1 year of growing seeds on your property and saving them. But next year, you'll see a noticeable difference. And also, if you plant the seed in the soil that is on your land, the seed is going to be stronger, the plant is going to be stronger, and it'll recognize if it can climatize to your area. Once it does, then it will build the bacteria and the fungi within the cells in order for it to really thrive and provide its medicine. So right now, we're being able to benefit from a winter's worth of soil building. Now all the seeds are just gonna dig into the soil and create medicine.
Because the seeds actually have the microbiome of the soil that it came from. And then when it continues to uptake that same microbiome, which is the endophytic system, which is the microbiome of inside of the plant, then just like human beings, it acclimates to the same zone. You know, we talk a lot about the microbiome of the human being, but it's also important to start bringing up the conversation of the microbiome of the plant, because it also has bacteria and fungi that digest and helps bring up nutrition. So it's sort of cool to think about it for acclimation.
There's a 2-kilo bag of seeds. So this has got 100,000 seeds in it. And I've got hundreds of bags like this.
Also, today is a Pisces moon. It's a really beautiful time. It's the new moon phase in Pisces. It's a really beautiful time all day today and tonight to just plant as many seeds as you can. Even your microgreens or your sprouts for your kitchen, they'll be really vigorous if you plant them today.
Get them cracking, crack-a-lacking. Wow, we've been rocking this for what, 9, 10, 11, 2.5 hours. That's pretty good. Went by quick today. I didn't have to deal with the live thing. It's kind of nice to do the show not live, even though I know a lot of people are kind of bummed out, because it's nice to have them as well, the audience, and being able to somehow help the conversation along. You know, often they'll be able to ask questions and lead the conversation, but that was not the case today. So it is what it is. Lots of seeds. I know where I'm going to get my seeds if I need any seeds. I'm just going to be sending a couple of private messages. Hey, what's up with all those?
When you re-upload this, dude, as a premiere, and then people can talk in there as they're in house church as it's going. That's how I do some of my videos.
Oh yeah.
Schedule it as a premiere, and then people can talk all the way through it for the couple hours.
Perfect. But they won't be able to talk to us, but they can talk to each other.
You can talk to each other, and you can jump in there too and say, "Hey, we're gonna be in the premiere." It's another way of being able to talk to people well after you've done the video.
I like
it. And this is where I'll jump in and say we need a germplasm institute for North America for our cannabis genetics, so that they can be acclimated, so that there are regional grows that are around the U.S. and Canada that are growing on certain longitudes and latitudes. Because when I used to order my hemp back in Hungary and Romania, I was actually knew exactly what the output of this compote seed, exactly what we were growing had, because they were actually grown in proper institutes that were properly acclimating it, so I could maximize, you know, the fiber that I was trying to get out of the actual hectares. Okay, that's real projections that I needed to have. And if you don't have proper acclimated seeds right out the gate, you're not going to get the reality that you're searching for, you know. And that's a reality that is different from what we're doing here in America, because we were growing 300 to 400 seed per square meter, which is not how we're doing it here, because we have the machinery in Eastern Europe to break that hemp down, where we have absolutely none of that infrastructure or large scale dunking tanks for, you know, redding the hemp, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm very fascinated to see, as the hemp industry grows throughout North America, actual investment in the infrastructure that will be needed. But on top of that, Germplasm Institute needs to be there just for the start of this, before any of that can really take off, so people can have good steady supply, because we're going to see cross-pollination ruin seed crops because it's going to increase THC in the hemp. That's just the reality of what we're going to see, as well as we're going to see the reverse in, you know, people growing outdoors for, you know, cannabis for their smoking. So these are real realities we have to, you know, look at and face. And I understand why a lot of people are going towards CBD, because it's easier to just, you know, shake the flowers as opposed to invest in the billions of dollars needed for a fiber factory to cottonize the hemp to make it into a product that could go to a market to manufacture a product that consumer could get today. That's decades away still.
Sure.
Yeah, there's a group I met from Saskatchewan, I believe, and his father had invented some technology it had to do with trees and what was inside trees, and I can't remember if it was the length or the percentages, or he had this technology, and then he was very successful with this technology. And then years later, he tuned it to cannabis, to hemp, for fiber, and now they're doing this big fiber project. And I know Martin Moravchik, who was one of the founders of Manitoba Harvest, has spent the last 5 years trying to crack the economic viability of fiber production in hemp. And I know that, go ahead. Oh, you're muted.
I could speculate, Mark, on what they're doing.
Sure.
Yeah, so it's probably just having to removing the lignin efficiently from the cellulose. So you have to do that in wood. In wood, there's a lot more lignin than there is in hemp, but it's the same type of process to basically pulp, you know, for
I'm not
the
sure
paper
that's what
industry.
it is. It was some other like
That's not
type
what
of,
it is?
no, it was some type of like X-ray or like photograph of the lumber that he could figure something out, and he was tuning it to hemp to figure out to grow these fibers that you can't really see with the naked eye, but when you do it with this machine, you get an idea of the quality from the data points of the photos, or something like that. It reminded me much of what the guys from Carnegie Mellon University were doing, the robotics division, the AI division, where they had developed that camera to photograph buds, and they were taking all of these different data points, and they were trying to basically recognize when the plant was in peak production of, say, THC, like a single, molecule.
Well, how you ret also depends on what type of fiber you're going to come out with. I mean, I remember Gardella has a machine that could actually remove the fiber from the hemp wet, but the problem is still the lignin in between. So in Europe, I mean, for Hungary, we would soak the hemp in these large concrete tubs so that the natural biologicals would eat away the lignin, and then we would come away with a very golden fiber. If we let it
retting.
Right. If we field retted it and just let it lay out in the field, it would turn gray. And that's how a lot of the Polish hemp was. It's just the natural biome.
Ultraviolet light.
Correct.
Right.
So it's just all about what you're trying to come out with a final fiber. So we wanted a light golden. So we had to force soak it to actually water ret it to do that. Whereas, you know, that infrastructure's there and they can actually keep it and do it currently.
Hungarian breeders also bred varieties of hemp which had much more golden fiber.
Correct.
We'll have to get Rob and Amir on here one day. They've got their hemp boutique company. They've done a little documentary.
Well, I lived in Hungary off and on. I was deeply involved with the Kampolti research station, which is where Kampolt was developed by Dr. Ivan Boksa, who was a good friend of mine. I taught him how to breed cannabis. He taught me how to breed industrial hemp.
Surprisingly, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, because that's what we use the Compolte genetic, and because of the golden, as well as its availability after we water retted it to still maintain through that. So it was a great crop, and yeah, love it.
He was the world's foremost hemp breeder until he died in '97.
Did you know Goro Borodko from the Institute of Bass Fibers, Sam?
Was he in Yugoslavia?
He was in the Ukraine, in Kiev.
Oh,
those were the Zolotonosha guys.
I met him via telephone and stuff, but I never met him in person.
We're out of the Vavilov Institute, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, we worked with the Vavilov Institute for 5 years.
We met Goroborodko because we flew him from Kiev to Manitoba to our hemp shop called the Hemp Exchange in like 91 or 92 or something. No, sorry. It would have been 90. No, it probably would have been that 94 maybe. That sounds right. And he brought a couple of his farmers, and this was the beginning of us importing the 4 tons of Zolotonosha 11 and 13 into Manitoba to grow our first experimental hemp field in over 73 years. It was pretty cool.
I don't want to criticize the Ukrainians, but they're notoriously broke and
oh yeah,
they need more money.
Dude, they couldn't put fuel in their tractors.
They tried to sell me hemp until I sent a rad meter and it went.
Well, we brought seeds over fine, and it kickstarted a big part of Canada's, the whole hemp grain, as a food, as an oil, and as a protein powder. All of those things were really kickstarted with Zolotonosha.
ATN, was that the Chernobyl strain?
Yeah, the OG Chernobyl.
Well, funny enough,
that's dark Chernobyl.
That's how we found out about hemp as a phytoremediative product in Canada through those farmers that were tobacco farmers, and that's how that in Chernobyl growing hemp project got started.
Right, but you got to wonder, Marcus, like, did oil from those plants make it into products?
No, it was experimental in 94, 95, 96, 97. Canada didn't change the law till 98 when it became commercial, and now you could do stuff with it. Before that, like, there was no squeezing seed, or there was just destruction. And so they were tripping out because they had to test their tobacco field, I guess, from the radium-226 that they spray on tobacco, which is a radioactive nucleotide and does definitely register on one of those little Geiger counters. Their field was way too low, and they had no idea at first because it was the first time they ever grew hemp ever. They just, I don't think, could believe that the hemp was that phytoremediative, that it was that it could pull that much up that would make a large noticeable difference. Kind of freaked them out, actually, because now they had hemp that was like, you can't just throw it away. There's like rules you have to follow. You heard what?
Sam, I was wondering if you have heard of anybody. I had heard right after Fukushima that they were going to try and do some remediation using hemp in Japan. Have you heard anything regarding that?
No, I heard they did it in the Ukraine, but I haven't heard anything about Japan. Here's some mutant seeds that are as big as peas. They're 12 to 1 gram.
What kind of cultivar is that?
Well, I'm trying to get it in my camera.
Well, you're not doing very well. I'd say pull it back a little bit. There you go.
Those are huge.
Yeah, the average seed, like a skunk seed, is 50, 60 to 1 gram. These are 12 to 1 gram.
Don't you have like the little ones that are like 100 or 200 or something?
No, they're 800.
800, those little Nepali seeds?
They're not Nepali. I got them in Kashmir.
Oh.
Make better like hemp oil or better food product with the seeds larger?
No, I got them because they were the smallest cannabis seeds I've ever seen in my life.
Wow. I eat hemp nuts in cereal every day, so those would be great. Those look like peanuts.
Oh yeah, the big ones. Yeah, you can shell them, and then it's like a pinyon nut.
Yeah, do people grow those for food product, or what's the those THC type
no,
1?
They don't have THC. I bred them for 5 years and made them almost THC free.
Nice.
What's the cannabinoid content of it then?
CBG?
There's a little bit of CBD and THCV, but to be honest, what I did for 5 years was I bred all cannabinoids away from it because I figured if it had the ability to make any cannabinoids, it might also make some THC, even though the papers weren't published until recently that show that most CBD synthases can produce about a 25-to-1 ratio of THC, whether you want it or not.
So what about the terpene profile?
A little better.
Terpenes were really, really interesting. You could find individuals that smelled just like Afghan hash, and you could find ones that smelled pretty much like Thai weed.
Yeah, some of the type 4 plants have less leakage because they don't have a CBD synthase gene. So there's still some THC, but it's usually like 100 or 200 to 1, presumably coming from the other residual cannabinoid genes that are still floating around.
Right. I know CBD does it. We didn't understand the exact mechanisms when we bred the world's first high CBD variety in, what was that, in the late 90s.
Yeah.
But the end effect is still the same, that it was coming from someplace. And, and I wouldn't be surprised if a few of the other ones like CBC can also do similar things.
Yeah, that's kind of
high
orange
levels
too.
of CBG though? Was CBG in there? Or CBGA, I guess?
Well, if you've got a real CBG variety, you might be able to stop it all at CBG. But the easier way to do it is to find a mutant variety that won't even make CBG. Then the entire cannabinoid train is stopped and you've got a true null void variety.
Does it make alpha-talvic acid, which is the thing that makes CBG?
That's what it is it's the CBG synthase that is not performing.
Yeah, that's a levitolic acid cyclase and what else is in that pathway?
It's GOT, right? It's the geranyl olivic acid transferase. I think that's what it's called. GOT, right? And
well, the
so
name's been mixed around in the literature. I think there's some debate over what to call it. But yeah, some people call it GOT. Others, I think, are calling it levitolic acid cyclase. But yeah, the literature's a little bit messy on there. But yeah, it glues on that GPP onto Levitol, right?
Right. So Sam, I'm just wondering, can you back up the pathway all the way to that? Like, I know that I can't believe the varieties that I see. I saw this one guy who's got a variety now that's got 14% CBG. There's it's less than 1% of CBD, but no THC at all, none. And,
I did that 20 years ago.
Yeah, well, the rest of the world has finally caught up to you, Sam. What can we say? But so I'm wondering, can you back it up even a step before that? So if
then it produces no CBG.
Yeah, so does it produce alpha-talvic acid?
And maybe the terpene levels are higher. We haven't done enough research.
That makes sense. Yeah, the GPP is competitive in the terpene synthase pathway. So if you knock out the ability to conjugate GPP to a levitolic acid, it's going to end up getting used and shunted over in the terpene pathway. Particularly, I think the monoterpenes are. It's usually it's a different. I think it's FPP on the sesquiterpenes, but the monoterpenes are all sucking up GPP.
I just
wonder, is there any monoterpenes I like anyway?
Is there any interest in looking at a levitolic acid as a cannabinoid, or not a cannabinoid, but or I guess olivitol, because it would decarboxylate, right?
Yeah, so some people claim that's it's kind of a rescue med for too much THC. I don't know how true it is.
Oh, really?
Yeah, if you dose people with Levitol, it will bring down their high. But that's.
Sam, do you know about that?
I've never done it myself.
How would Sam ever know about anything that brings highs down?
Yeah, well,
knows
what to
life
avoid.
the other direction.
Yeah, exactly.
He's out shorting that stock.
He knows what to avoid, right?
He's like, I've spent my life working in the other direction.
Olivitol is essentially kryptonite for Sam.
That's
Get
why
that
we
stuff
were
away from me.
interested in the terpenes so much, because they can potentiate and modulate the effects of THC, and that's what I was looking for.
I'm really curious about the friend of yours, Mark, that has a CBG plant that has residual CBD instead of THC, because I haven't seen that yet, and that might have a different genetic thing that we learn. What we typically see is a little residual THC, but much lower than like a CBD line, because the CBD synthase gene is gone in those plants. So that thing can't leak on you. But we think, like Sam said, it might be the cannabichromene genes that are still there, leaking some THC. And there's some plants have that's a 2 megabase region in the plants that is missing in some plants and present in others.
Right.
So there's probably a way to breed away the cannabichromene cluster.
The group in at Dartmouth, they originally found this out. When was it, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, and they published about CBD producing THC in a fixed ratio, but they were only looking at either one of the synthases, or they were looking at a particular suite of them. So it could be that some of them only do it at 5 to 1 or 50 to 1, or I mean, you just
Yeah, there's a good paper from Zerbel on this where they did site-directed mutagenesis on the enzymes. I should say in the DNA construct of the enzymes, put them into yeast. So there was only one cannabinoid synthase gene per yeast, and then measured the ratios. And it's a really good paper that shows like which parts of THC synthase and CBD synthase, like when you mutate them, what artifacts do you see?
Did they have all of the CBD synthases? I didn't even know people knew there was how many exactly there are.
I think they started with the canonical one that's an NCBI, has like an EE number on it, and then just mutated from there. And a lot of the variations that they find that do impact the yield, we've not seen naturally yet in the sequencing that we've done across those genes. But they do give us an idea of what parts of the enzyme like are really sensitive to glycosylation signals, or sensitive to other types of.
So they're showing theoretical synthases, whereas I'm talking about the ones that are actually found.
Exactly. Yeah, they're not representative of what's in the marketplace. It's just kind of like what areas of this gene can we break and maybe change the ratio. But in all cases, the enzymes were promiscuous in that they did not produce a pure single cannabinoid. They had, THC synthase produced some background, and CBD synthase, as you said, had like a 23 to 1 ratio of CBD to THC. So maybe there are natural ones out there that are mutated in such a way that they actually expand or compress that ratio, and that's something that I think we got to figure out.
The work that was done there at Dartmouth, where they first found this, I contributed, I think 6 or 7 or 8 different kinds of CBD, so that they could find more versions of synthases.
Oh, cool. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of them. We have, I think there's over 222 mutations in THC and CBD synthase alone that are on the SNP chip that we're building. And those are just from naturally derived plants, no mutagenesis done in them. So there's plenty of variation out there on those genes. We just don't have good connections to what those variations do to the chemotype, because we're not always getting chemotype information. So if you guys ever find something that breaks the 25 to 1 rule of CBD to THC, coming off of a CBD dominant plant, call us. We'll sequence it instantly and see if we can find anything in those genes that might be predictive of USDA compliant hemp.
Have you tried Grace, the variety GW uses?
I don't know that we have access to that.
Okay, well, it's a shame because I strongly suspect it breaks it, but I don't have proof. I wish I did.
Yeah, Etienne probably has that data. I would imagine. I'm sure he's studied it.
Going deep down the rabbit hole there, boys. I appreciate that. It's nice. It's good.
Do you have any varietals
Strong
that
finish.
are CBG high, CBG varietals that are high in terpenes? Because the ones that are out now are
Yes, absolutely.
What's
A lot
high
of
in
the ones that
terpenes? Like 3 to 5%, 2 to 3%? Like on a flower?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, sure. You were the one that said yes.
Yeah, I think 3 to 5% definitely is the traditional upper limits, whereas of course they can be bred specifically for like the folks out at NAPRO and stuff. I think they're 10%, and people are reporting even higher. I haven't seen it yet myself.
We gotta
Most
get
of the
one of
CBD
those
that's out
NAPRO
there
guys
now
on
is
here. Go ahead, John.
most of the CBD that's out there now is low terps. So it's it's not as good of a smokable hemp type thing as the high CBD varietals that are high terpenes.
Actually, the best smokable is high THC. Believe me.
Some good CBD varieties coming out, but I believe him. I believe you.
I like the 1-to-1s or the many-to-manys. I like the equal parts.
Double click to enter full screen mode. All right, here we go. Mark's laying it down.
Yeah, I think that it's high terpene CBD is really evolving, and I think CBG is just slightly behind it.
CBG herbs, CBD.
Then will come CBC, THCB, CBCB, CBDV.
Yeah, I can't find the particular one I'm looking for, but just looking on his Facebook, this is the dude, Mateus, and he's a Swiss guy who's in the north of Italy, but he has a seed production operation somewhere in Oregon now.
Well, he must. Is he connected to Shanti Baba?
No,
not at all.
No, I know these folks, and yeah, they have a high CBD variety called.
Yeah.
I forget the name of it. Yeah, I tried to buy some of them, but they wanted minimum orders of fairly large amounts.
Yeah, well, anyway, this is the guy, and he does have, this isn't the data that I remember seeing. This is just, again, indicative of the levels that he's seeing here, which is pretty damn high. He had a bag on his post here of CBGA hash. I've never seen CBGA hash before. It looked really light, Sam. Let me see if I can pull that up.
By light, you mean the color or the darkness?
Yeah. Let me stop sharing and let me look for that and see if I can find it.
Mark, and we're making.
See, that's incredible.
Was it clear? Was it golden?
I just muted myself. Hold on. Let me see the picture.
Photograph I saw, it was dry sifted hash, not water hash.
Hey, Mark, in upstate New York, we're making some CBG dry sift, and it's coming out pretty light in color.
Do you guys typically see that? Do you tend to?
I'm going to share again. Hold on a second.
More cannabichromene than THC in these lines. That's kind of an interesting ratio.
Can you see that?
It is a very light hash.
Yeah, it looks like white sand almost.
Yeah,
interesting.
That's beautiful.
Richard Rose and Terpeno Lean.
Yeah, Terpeno Lean. He's an interesting dude.
40% CBG. Boom.
Sovereign Fields and Phytonics have, if I'm saying Phytonics,
but it's 0.3%. I mean, I think he might just be saying that just so he can post it.
I bet you Sam could get that 40 up to a solid 75.
That's nice looking stuff, though, eh? Come on, let's give it.
It's beautiful.
I'd have to try. I have confidence in you, Sam. I'd put my money on you.
Hey, Mark, I commented down here because he's like, CBG hash. I said, actually, CBGA.
That's awesome. That's the pothead chemist's version of like grammar.
Yeah. It's like,
actually, it's
CBGA.
there, not there.
I think what would be cool is that I guess I'll assume that when you heat up CBGA, it decarboxylates just like THC would. So
absolutely correct.
Okay, so does CBG have a psychoactive effect at the CB1 receptor? Do you know, Sam?
No, not at all. And CBG doesn't get you high. CBC doesn't get you high. CBD doesn't get you high. THCB doesn't get you high. Now, there are people who claim that they take CBD and they get psychoactive effects. Well, it ain't high. It's maybe calming or lack of paranoia, but it doesn't get you high the way THC and the right dosing get you high.
Right.
None of the other, well, that's not true. CBN will get you loaded, and Delta 8 THC will also get you high, but I'm not so sure that Delta 8 isn't just an artifact of laboratories. I've never seen a Delta 8 synthase, and I don't know if
there is no Delta 8 synthase. No, so Delta 9 is what's made in a plant, and then acid catalyzed isomerization is what happens to move it over to Delta 8. Yeah, that's
what I'm convinced, but I keep hearing other people tell me that, no, we found Delta 8 in the plant. And I said,
no,
yeah.
All you have to do is
what kind of lab protocol?
Yeah, read Meshulam's paper. Meshulam covered this.
Me, I believe you.
Yeah, and you've read Meshulam's papers, and I've read Meshulam's papers, and what I can tell you is that in his discovery work, in fact, I should tell everybody this. I just wrote an article for the American Journal of Endocannabinoid Medicine, which is Jehan Marcou's new journal, and they want to dig deep into the history of cannabinoid chemistry. So I'm going to write a few more articles for them, but it was really cool. What I found out again is that group in Cambridge at the end of the century in the 1890s were the first ones to isolate not just cannabinol, not just CBN, but to isolate THC as well. So
was that extra filled in wood?
Yeah, yep.
I would have never guessed.
And check it out. What I recently read in someone else's paper, I didn't include this in my own, but what I recently read, there's that paper that's talking about the conversion of CBD over to CBN using iodine, and it was an Italian group, and the first author on the group was Palestro.
Yeah, I've got it.
Yeah, on that paper, check out the acknowledgement to Wood Spivey and this Easterfield. So the research that they did, they found that both Wood and Spivey perished, and I thought I had heard that one had gotten malaria, and that's not true at all. One actually perished in a lab explosion. I think it was Wood who died in a lab explosion. They were trying to nitrate THC to make nitrocannabinol, and in that experiment, I think he exploded. And then the other guy, so not Easterfield, but Wood, Spivey, and Easterfield. So that I think Spivey's the guy who died in the explosion. Wood died from basically taking too much of the shit that they were making. They were making all kinds of derivatives in their lab, and he ended up poisoning himself. Easterfield was the professor that I think they were working for, and
it's a harsh mistress.
Yeah, there was a rumor that he also too had perished, but it turned out no, he had actually made it out of New Zealand alive, and so it was interesting what happened to those three people. But they published two papers in the 1890s, one in 1896 and one in 1899. And damn, if they weren't like the real true pioneers who first isolated cannabinoids. And they, in their paper, one of the references they have is back to some journal of pharmaceuticals from 1850 something, and I can't find that reference. I can't even find the journal. You know, I figure it was.
Send me the name, and I'll tell you if I've got it by any.
Yeah, I think it was some German article or something like that, because I think
I have
humans.
quite a few papers in both German, Italian, and other languages. I can't
Yeah.
read, but I
I'm
can.
just
I
amazed.
can.
If you
I
think
can
about
hand
it,
type them into Google because they're not digital. They're just scanned
right.
the journals. You know.
This is like contemporary with the discovery of the light bulb. These guys isolating THC in this lab in Cambridge. To me, just way ahead of their time. I mean, this is, way before Adams and Kahn. And so, yeah, so my next article, I'm going to write about Kahn, Robert Sidney Kahn, who kind of looked at the Wood, Spivey, and Easterfield work and said, you know what? Their formula isn't quite correct and their structure isn't quite correct. And Robert Sidney Kahn kind of got the major elements of what the correct empirical formula for cannabinoids and THC and CBD were. So he kind of nailed that, and he nailed the structure. And again, this is in like 1934, way before Adams. See, Adams wasn't until later in that decade, right? So then there was Adams and Todd, who is still, this is 20 years before Meshulam. So it's just, I love that history. It's just a wonderful.
What Meshulam had that none of them had was NMR.
NMR, that's right. Yep, I've said it
That's
before.
what made the absolute big difference.
Yeah, but you know what? In researching the paper that I just wrote, what I also kind of came to the realization was, so what he did is he took hash and he chromatographed it on a silica gel column. But then what he did was he took the fractions that contained primarily THC and he made a crystalline derivative that he can crystallize to purity. And thinking back to my academic training as a chemist, one of the classes you have is the identification of organic compounds. And it's fascinating because back before we had HPLCs and GCs and all this analytical instrumentation that we have now, they used to make derivatives, and crystalline derivatives were always popular because you could purify it from all the non-crystalline impurities. And so what Meshulam made is he made a crystalline derivative that he could purify to the nth degree of purity, and then he removed the thing that made it a crystalline derivative and then further distilled it. And so that way that it was absolutely pure. There's no other impurities in there. And so Meshulam used, again, NMR, like you say, Sam, to solve where the double bond was. The thing that miffed Todd and Kahn and Adams was the fact that, again, they were using derivatization chemistry to identify what the structural components of the cannabinoids were. And in that derivatization chemistry, this goes back to Kevin's original point, they were isomerizing it over to delta 8. So if you look at the structures in Adams's work from the 40s, you'll see they're all delta 8 configured because a lot of times the first thing they did is, well, let's hit it with acid and see what happens. And that's exactly how Spivey died. They were trying a nitration with nitric acid and sulfuric acid. That's also the same explosion that killed Lamont DuPont, who was the son of E.I. DuPont, the founder of the DuPont company, was killed in a nitration explosion in the Rapano works over in New Jersey. So yeah, man, I love chemical history like that. It's so fucking cool. And digging into the cannabinoid chemistry, because it was kind of like this outlaw thing that only certain labs did. Like there was obviously Meshulam, who arguably was the kind of like the Shulgin, the Sasha Shulgin of cannabinoid chemistry. But just like Sasha Shulgin, Meshulam stood on the shoulders of Adams. Yeah, of giants, right? All the people who came before, and Meshulam will humbly, like any chemist like myself, will humbly admit that we're here today because of all of these people who did this previous work. So these Brits who were distilling THC back before the turn of the century. They didn't know it, but here we are now, over 100 years later, reading their landmark work. And you know what? Their boiling point was spot fucking on. I mean, it was exactly the way it should have been, which is the reason why I believe they didn't just isolate cannabinol, they isolated THC in 1896. And it was really, for many years, thought that because they called it cannabinol, that, oh, they isolated CBN. But I don't think they isolated CBN. I think they isolated THC. And I think if you go into Meshulam's paper, Meshulam has a wide body of papers in the scientific literature. He references all of this prior work by Robert Sidney Kahn and Easterfield, Wood, and Spivey, all those people. It's fascinating to go through the Meshulam portal to kind of rediscover all of that chemistry, just like in the same way that I discovered bluegrass music through the Olden and the Way record, right? Which led me to this portal of Bill Monroe bluegrass that I had no clue even existed, right? I found it through this portal. Olden and the Way, yeah, it was one of Jerry Garcia's projects, but it was the Jerry Garcia thing that brought me into it, and now I discovered this whole world of bluegrass music. Well, it's kind of like I knew about Meshulam and I knew about his important work, but I had no clue really, or no real appreciation for all the work that was done in the pre-Meshulam cannabinoid chemistry.
Meshulam has written very, very good reviews. So has Loomis, and so has Petrie.
And yeah, Roger Pertwee, that's right.
All three of them have written fantastic. And Meshulam 2 or 3 times has written histories of it.
Have you guys seen that work on cannabimavone that just came out?
Yes, I that's what I'm smoking right now.
Yeah, we talked about that. In fact, I reached out to the guy through Chimera. You guys know Chimera, right?
Yeah, they're in Italy, right?
Yeah, so I reached out to the guy through, because you would think, Kevin, I mean, again, I'm just throwing this out there, if allotovic acid is its biosynthetic precursor, wouldn't you think cannabimavonic acid would be
what exists?
Yeah, it should have the acid group next to the phenolic OH, right?
Well,
so
yeah,
you're right. It's there.
The other possibility could be that it's being produced the way THC is produced by CBD synthases. I'm not saying that's more likely. I'm just saying there's a slight possibility.
Well, it just probably underwent adventitious decarboxylation, and if they're characterizing the extract by GC, obviously it's going to decarboxylate in the GC. But it would be interesting if they actually are isolating the carboxylic acid of that. Again, I don't know, like when people are talking about CBG, just to go back to that for a second, there seems to be a lot of emphasis in CBG. Is this really for CBG, or is it the acid? And like you said, Sam, it decarboxylates just like THC would. So I'm trying to understand whether or not the acids are of just differential interest.
It's also got an interesting 5-carbon ring as the outside of the olivotolic acid, so it's not your typical 6-carbon.
And it's a ketone, right? It's got a ketone and it's got a methyl ketone. And methyl ketones can sometimes make a shift base with a primary amino group, and so sometimes those are like, that's a cross-linking reaction for proteins, with aldehydes.
The chemistry is above me, but if it comes from a plant, I'm interested.
Yeah. This one they claim it does. I don't think they mentioned like what concentration they found it in. This is different from the Italian work that found THCP a couple months ago.
No, I understand. I've got the paper. I've had it for a couple of weeks.
Yeah. So they talk about PPR gamma receptors, but I don't think.
If I remember correctly, this compound was first found, gee whiz, 5 or 10 years ago.
It was, in hemp. You're right.
Hey, Kevin, let's talk about THCP just for a second, because I don't think you were on that hash church when we were talking about that paper.
Yeah,
But
sure.
so the fact that it's the 2-carbon higher homologue of the cannabinoids, I said, well, doesn't that make sense that, like, and I guess the 3-carbon one is the Fearon, right? So you
Yeah.
have the Fearon,
Yeah.
then you have THC, then you have THCP. Well, shit, don't you think maybe like there's a little bit of the 9 in there and maybe a little bit of the 11? So every 2 carbons, perhaps, yeah. So do you think
So
that could?
Kiesling's group did. Dimitrix published this or presented this at CanMed this year, where they took THC synthase, cloned it in yeast, and fed it different chain length precursors. So they gave it hexanoic acid and got THC out. They gave it octanoic acid and got THCP out. I think they use a butane derivative of some sort to get the Fearons out. I got to go back and look at his presentation. Maybe he also put a 10-mer in there, and got a longer chain length out as well that went out to maybe 9. But it was fascinating that the yeast have no problem making these things. So the THC synthase doesn't care. It's really happening upstream. Probably at GOT or levitolic acid cyclase or prenyltransferase. I don't know which one is involved with that, but the last step of the synthesis doesn't care about the chain length.
So let me ask you a question. This is something I speculated on, and I don't know, but like if I get a really good live resin product, let's see, this one here, if I add up my cannabinoids and I add up my terpenes, so I have 80% total cannabinoids and 15%. So there's 5% unknown, right? 5% other stuff. Don't you think like part of that other stuff could be THCP?
THCV.
Yeah, as well, all of them, just like a whole family of things that show, I don't know if I'm using the terminology correctly, a lack of or promiscuity of the enzyme's active site to act on a spectrum of substrates as opposed to just the one.
Yeah, no, I think so. I'm wondering if you can add them as well. Like, how could you boost production of hexanoic acid versus octanoic acid? Like, is there a way to do that in the jasmine pathway, or can you even? I don't even know if you could supplement them or spray them, because they're effectively like alkanes, right? They would effectively melt your trichomes if you spray too much of that stuff, right?
Yeah, well, the thing that I think is that its hexanoic come from glucose, which is a C6, so it's got to have a sugar precursor to it, right? I mean, I don't know this for sure. I'm just thinking like along the Krebs cycle, but so the question is like people have been asking, oh man, that stuff's 30 times higher, or it gets you, I guess they did a docking study, on the receptor site, and they found that it had,
30-fold more affinity or something.
Yeah, that's just a delta G measurement, really. I mean, so here's the point. Here's the long belabored point I'm trying to make, which is that if you look at the entourage effect, and if you assume that, okay, so in that stuff I got from the dispensary, they know what 80% is cannabinoids, 15% terpenes, there's 5% other stuff, right? So that other stuff could have like THCP, which is 30 times more.
Could go a long way, yeah.
Right? So part of that entourage effect are these smaller amounts of like that THCP, and who knows if the C9, the C11, whatever. You think that there could be something to that, you think?
I do, yeah. I mean, I guess we got to figure out what the standards are and how to measure this stuff on HPLC so that we're not...
I really disagree, because I don't think the amounts of THCP would amount to diddly squat. It's probably, even in the concentrate like you talk about, there's 80% THC, if that's what the cannabinoid is. And there's 0.001 or less.
Right. It's so maybe, but there could, what are the other phantom compounds? There's some other things in there that's making up that other 5%.
There's THC and CBDB,
No. All the so in Pennsylvania, they measure all 7. I think it's 7. Maybe it's 9. Let's see. Yeah, I think they measure 9 different cannabinoids. So all those cannabinoids have been accounted for. The terpenes, I mean, it's a nice saucy product. You saw my sausage.
Well, but nobody was measuring THCP
Exactly.
or CBDP or CBD and THCP.
Right.
Nobody was measuring that before.
Or if they were, they could be peak under peak on the chromatograph.
Okay, but like I said, they weren't measuring it.
Yeah.
If it was hidden
but
under another
see,
peak.
that's just the point, Sam, is that last 5% of stuff that my state doesn't test for is really the key differentiator ultimately on why it works so well, right? It's the cannabinoids and the terpenes, yes, and that's a high cannabinoid extract.
Be right, Mark, but you could also be presuming and not be right.
Oh yeah, that's a great thing.
Well,
about
it's certainly
speculation.
murky, Mark, but I think you make a good point that that 5% in terms of numbers is a lot, and that's a lot of unknown. That to bring it all there, so to speak, it's like that 5%. It might not be THCP, but it could be other acids.
It could have something that maybe isn't 30 times better, but maybe only like 5 or 6 or 7 times better.
Right.
The fact that it's only there in a fraction of a percent, and maybe there's 2 or 3 things. Someone today was asking online in the chat about flavonoids, and I think in a lot of these low temperature butane extractions, I think a lot of flavonoids come through. I mean, I wouldn't see any reason why they wouldn't.
Well,
in fact, I think that's the major reason why all this stuff's colored.
If you smoke flavonoids, it deactivates them. So nobody's getting any they're not getting high from smoking flavonoids.
Right, but
It can certainly be effective.
But a certain fraction of that 5% of extractables is flavonoids. Like if it's 0.5 or 0.2, flavonoids have high extinction coefficients, which mean they're highly colored. So a little bit of flavonoid can really color it. And the fact that most cannabis extracts, at least the things that I see, are mostly like, like this kind of color. I mean, the terpenes, if you isolate the terpenes, they're all colorless.
Yeah.
The cannabinoid should be colorless. The thing that's colored here, I believe, is the flavonoids. I don't know that for a fact. I just think that the color containing
also
compound.
oxidized cannabinoids and oxidized terpenes do have color. Well, at least the oxidization colorizes them.
Yeah, reddish and yellow colors.
Yeah.
Well, that was pretty deep down the rabbit hole. Not too bad. I went a little bit past noon, but I loved it. It's good. Just keep talking if you guys want to talk. I'm not opposed.
Well, I haven't spoke with Kevin in a while. Kevin, it's been a while, right? Where we've both been on. It's like Kevin's been on, and then I was traveling one time, and I think I've been on, and Kevin.
It takes quarantines, unfortunately.
Benefit from
fish shows, one or the other. We'll get to a fish show together.
Yeah, hey, let me shout out the great Went poster that's behind you. That thing's pretty sick.
Yeah, I did a little of that. I was reminiscing on some of their. Have you heard that podcast of theirs now? They talk about the thing at the swamp. I remember being at the swamp. I can't believe it was
cool is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Marcus was there. Marcus, weren't you there?
No, I was not there. I think the biggest kind of big thing that Fish ever put on that I went to, which wasn't a big thing at all, it just ended up being historic, was, I was at the live one, the tweezer that they put on there in Bangor, Maine, but it was 94 Halloween show in Glens Falls where they did the double White Album.
Oh, the White Album, yeah.
Yeah, I was front row center for that. It was absolutely bonkers. So long. It was 5.5 hours, which for 94 was, I think it might have been the longest concert they'd ever played to date that wasn't like some specialized New Year's show or something, It was long. It was good. Happy to be there.
Cool.
Yeah, I
Some
caught
good,
it
good
in
shows.
Providence
At
recently.
University of Oregon, 1991 EMU, Wow Hall, and then they played the Hilton in Eugene, and that's when I think they start the first bouncing ball and the bouncing around the room
Oh, the
kind of
big
vibe.
balls?
Bouncing
Yeah.
around the room. Yeah, but here's the thing. How many Doniak Schweisses do you have?
Ah, there you go. I don't know
I
if
got
I
a ton of them.
gotta look through my college stuff. I bet I still have some of those in there.
Hey, how about that, eh? Some Doniak
My
Schweisses.
wife actually was going over pictures of Amy's farm. She's got a bunch of photos from her Amy's farm days. So
Fishman in a wedding dress.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, Amy's farm was a big deal. That was.
Remember when we used to play chess?
Yeah,
At the
yeah, that's
concerts?
right. Audience versus band, right?
Yep. Yeah, and what else we got here? We got.
And they amazingly won it one time. Didn't they beat the audience at one point?
No, it was a draw.
It was a
draw.
Draw. Yeah, they had a move each night for fall '95, leading up to the run at the Garden.
Well, what year is this? This is fall. This might be that. I can't
Fall
see the
95.
actual date. Yeah, it's
Marcus,
got like. Oh no,
what was the
94.
first concert you went to? What year?
My first concert was in 1984, and it was like Iron Maiden.
77. Led Zeppelin.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah, it was heavy.
86 Boston.
Woohoo!
Wow.
More than a feeling.
But guess who opened up for Iron Maiden in 1984? Any guesses?
Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Oh no! It was Twisted Sister.
Nice.
You can't even make that shit up.
That is Tiny Tim.
Well,
I mean, pretty much on some like crazy ketamine or something.
I was gonna say, since we're all quarantined, there's a lot of musicians out there that are offering music up now, and I think now's a good time to support those artists and to support those musicians that are, they're forced home like all of us, but this is, it's more than, as we all know, just like what we do, it's extremely stressful, and it's a hard time for them. So if we can go to Bandcamp, and I think 100% of the proceeds are going to artists right now. If we can find your favorite artist and pitch in, I think it would go a long way to them and speak volumes to the fan base out there that still care about music. And deep listen to albums. Go back to shows and close your eyes and get into it.
Very good idea. You've
It's a
inspired
really
me.
good time for that.
You've
It's such a
inspired
good
me.
time to get back to putting on a record and focusing in on it like a film, or and just kind of being in the moment with it. It's we're so distracted with so much that it gives us a chance to ground ourselves and bring ourselves back to things we enjoy, the simple things. So if any of you guys are out there looking for something to do, I think that's a really great way to get grounded.
Well, how I'm going to finish this off through your inspiration, Colin, is I'm going to share my screen and play one of the songs from Neil Young's Fireside sessions that he did a couple of days ago with his wife, Daryl Hannah. And
Nice.
so I'll thank you all for showing up. I'm going to do a bunch more hangouts, a bunch more hash churches. So, of course, I'll invite all of you guys. I'm not going to thank every single person that came in today because there was literally like 15 of us. But
I think,
thanks.
real quick, Marcus, I think we're going to.
Going on today as well. Like one of these artists who's doing a online couch tour, Skunk Sessions. Check him out. You might be able to catch some of that this afternoon.
Awesome. And what's that, Josh?
And I think we're going to do another session on Thursday with some more healing strategies and ways that people can get through, and educational series. Thanks, Wade, for helping get us connected to Jeffrey Hergen rather, and Stacy and everything. And we're going to just continue, down the path of ways that we can build our immune system and more plants that we can ally with, and maybe ways that we can, set up some of the new gardens in order to, create some of these healthy things in the future. So thank you everyone today for everything. We appreciate you.
All right. Neil's going live here. I'm going to share my screen. You guys are welcome to hang out for it. You're welcome to leave, whatever you like, but he's going up now. You guys can see it, yes or no?
Cool stuff.
Yep.
All right, Neil.
Yep, that's it.
How fucking cool is Neil Young? Just on a side note.
He's great.
He just came to my dispensary a few months ago, him and Daryl. They're fucking cool as hell.
Dude.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Amazing.
Long rip right through this, guys. Long rip the whole time.
We can't hear him though.
Really?
Yeah, I can't hear him. No.
Yeah,
Oh,
no,
here.
I can't hear him.
Peter, if we could hear him.
You can't hear him or you can?
No.
No, we can't.
No, we cannot.
How about now?
There you go.
Trying to turn it up. It's coming through very quiet.
There you go.
Sugar Mountain. I know that tune.
Shout out to Puerto Rico, who knows how to handle a crisis. Thanks a lot, guys.
And your mother and your dad. Oh, to live on Sugar Mountain.
Adios. Have a good afternoon, guys. See ya.
Peace, Kevin. Take care, man. Peace, everyone. I gotta go.
See you,
Good night.
Carl.
Peace, everyone.
Thank you.
There's a girl just down the aisle, hold her and see her smile. You can hear the words she wrote as you lean against the
Notes.
with the barkers and the colors. You can't be 20 on again, not sure funny how you feel when you're finding out it's real. Oh, to live on Sugar Mountain with the barbers and the colored blues. You can't be 20 on naturally there too soon. Oh, to live on Sugar Mountain with the barkers and the colors. You can't be 20 on Sugar Mountain. Cannabis indica speeds up.
These guys have a great.
Brilliant observation, take 8.
Later, Johnny. Later, Mark. You guys.
I hope you're doing well. I hope everything's okay in your house. I hope you have a place to be where you're with your loved ones. All right, that's enough, right?
Peace out, everybody.
Peace.